Hey guys. This is part 5 of What If Naruto Can Use Unlimited Blade Works. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 13. The Battle is to the Strong. Tosaka Rin stepped out into a clear and calm sunny day. The black-haired girl breathed in the new morning air deeply. A look of determination was clearly set on her face. The Tosaka heiress was a woman on a mission. Failure was not an option, and she would get her gallivanting, moronic, idiot of a hero back. Even if it meant she had to drag him whilst he was kicking and screaming. It had been a little over 6 months since Emiya Naruto had upped and disappeared from her life after their disastrous attempt at dismantling the Grail and saving her sister. 6 months of fruitlessly searching every nook and cranny for his whereabouts. She investigated high and low for any clues, and called in every favor possible. Months of restless sleep. Weeks of tireless work. Now, it was all about to be over. Her search would finally end. Today, she would be reunited with her thick-head blonde-haired idiot. Her hands reached up to her family's treasured ruby pendant and gave it once over. There were 2 in existence. One that Archer had held with him throughout his life, and another that had been used to save Emiya Naruto's life. The one she wore was from Archer while the other had went missing. It meant that Naruto had taken it with him. That thought alone had filled her with hope. That he hadn't just left her to go off to die in some meaningless battle. To throw himself away to save a bunch of people who would take advantage of his good graces. To save people who would later betray him. Rin had promised Archer, his future self, that she would look after him. That she wouldn't allow him to end up a twisted jerk like himself, and to make sure that he'll learn to like himself. That no matter what, she would do her best. Heroic spirit Emiya gave her a smile that knew dawn. A true smile. Not one that was cynical or nihilistic. But a smile from his heart that reminded why she fell in love with Emiya Naruto in the first place. The strong will, conviction, and never say die attitude was endearing to her. And she wanted to protect that. Don't worry, Tosaka. I'll try my best from now on, too. Her eyes closes. Her chest heaves and an audible sigh is emitted. It was a lot easier said than done. But nothing in life that was easy was ever worthwhile. Rin. Are you ready? A voice behind her. Her head turns. It was the true body of Miriam Solomon that greets her teal eyes. Ready as I'll ever be, she answers. The child's head nods. Good. We'll be a little late, but we should make it in time for the final match to take place. We'll set off from the outskirts of the Land of Spring's capital and travel on the King of Sky. Have everything you need? She bends down and slings her backpack over her shoulders. Let's go. The faster, the better. He smiles. Yes, indeed. Her hands tighten the straps and looks down at her ruby pendant. A lovely smile graces her features. Soon. The thought of seeing him again filled her with energy along with a wicked smile. And I'm going to tear Emiya-kun a new one when I see him. It wasn't long before Miriam and I made it up to the balcony where the village leaders spectated the matches from. Along the way there were multiple security checks and clearances that we had to go through from various bodyguards and retinue that traveled with their respective Kage. Miriam's ANBU turned and faced me before we ascended the final flight of stairs. Keep them busy, Emiya-kun. I'll be doing a deep probe scan of their minds. The more they talk, the easier it'll be for me to remain undetected. I'll meet you at the stairwell after this is all done. Gotcha. He heads up first, and I shadow him several steps behind. 5 sets of eyes locked onto my form the moment I stepped up. Their heads turned to afford a better look at me. My escort presents me to the 5 most powerful individuals on this continent. Emiya Naruto as requested, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi Hiruzen smiles with a nod and takes his pipe out of his mouth. So glad you can join us, Naruto-kun. You seem to have taken your sweet time to get up here. The next match is about to begin soon. I gave them all a closely guarded look. The Sandaime Hokage was seated in the middle with the Kage to his right. From there, I can see the Mizukage at the end and the Tsuchikage and Reikage on the left respectively. I recognize all 5 of the Kage before me. The old man was garbed in his usual white and red robes, so nothing out of place. There was a benign, old smile on his face that would put most people at ease. So same old there. Glancing over to his right, I see a familiar red head with a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. It's been several years since I last saw him, but he had grown considerably since then. No longer was there a crazed and manic look on his face, but a stoic yet gentle expression on it. There was a certain amount of confidence and pride he carried as well. Gaara. I shoot him a grin and he chuckles. Moving on to his right, I noticed the Mizukage had a coy smile plastered on her face. I blink. Did I say coy? I mean predatory. The woman was a most certainly beautiful that would undoubtedly catch the attention of both sexes easily. This was the woman who led the rebellion against her village for justice against their systematic genocide of bloodline users and ended the needless bloodshed brought forth by the previous Mizukage. Terumi Mei. I move on to the last 2. The Tsuchikage was a rather incredibly short old man. Hell, I think he was older than the old man Hokage himself if I had to take a guess. He had more wrinkles and liver spots on his face than the stars above from what I can see. There was a grumpy disposition to him with his arms crossed in front of his chest that went with a small scowl. I chalk it up to him missing his scheduled naps. Old people tend to like those things, right? This must be Inoki. There was a rather known epithet that went along with his name. Old Man Inoki, the fence sitter. The Ryotenbin, known for his tendency to sit on the fence on a subject or matter for a great deal of time before coming to a final decision. A ruthless and cunning man. It must have been why he has been the Tsuchikage for almost 50 years now. And lastly, my gaze falls upon the Raikage. He was the complete opposite of the Tsuchikage, being incredibly tall and had overtly large, bulging muscles. It was akin to that of some bodybuilder that had a knack for wrestling. I thought I was fairly tall, but the Raikage made me feel short. In fact, I think the chair that was seated underneath him was groaning in protest from supporting all that mass and muscle. The man that was once in contention for being the fastest living individual on this side of the world. At one point in time in his life he had fought my biological father, and had lived to tell the tale. A man with renowned strength that was said to have the ability to go pound for pound against the Hachibi Jinchuriki on a daily basis, and come out on top. Sorry, I took the scenic route and whatnot, I said unapologetically. Oh, and what did you see? You know. Stairs. Concrete. More stairs. Fantastic stuff, you know. The old man, Kage, and Mizukage share a small laugh. The other 2 were less than amused with my banter. Long time no see, Naruto-san, greets the Kage. Indeed, it's been what? 2? 3? Maybe 4 years since I last spoke to you, Gaara? And look at you being the leader of a nation now. I'm surprised you actually took my words to heart. Gaara shares an amused look. Well, after you almost beat me into a coma and saved me, I felt a certain obligation to take up on your advice to become a hero for my nation. They saw it fit to give me the hat after that whole debacle. I rubbed the back of my neck. I suddenly felt a lot older just thinking back on it. Long story short, it was a mission given to me by the Hokage to resolve the growing issues and disputes in the Land of Wind. One of 3 labors I had to complete in order to gain an early retirement. Out of the 3, I would say this one was the most difficult and laborious to complete. To speak of the battle, let's just say, there was a lot of shouting, crying, and bleeding that went out. Not to mention a significant renovation of the surrounding environment. Last time I heard, they had to redraw a map or something. Well, congratulations then. If I had known you were coming down, I would have gotten you something as a present. He shakes his head. No need. You saving me is a gift all on its own. I shrug. If you say so. So, a sultry voice drawls. This is the vaunted wrought iron hero. I have to say Momochi-kun's description of you pales in comparison to the real and living thing. The woman garbed in blue licks her lips and I gulp nervously. You certainly blow my expectations out of the water. I didn't expect him to be such a young and incredibly handsome strapping man. Her eyes appraises me up and down like I was some meat hanging off a rack. I blink a couple of times. Thank you? I respond back slowly. No, she shakes her head. I should be thank you for bringing Momochi-kun and Kurosaki-kun back to Kirigakure. Please do stop by my quarters so that I may properly thank you. I looked to the old man for help, but he was just grinning benignly. I glare before shifting my eyes to Gaara. He simply shrugs and had deigned it better for his life to stay out of it. I glare at him as well. Humph. This is the wrought iron hero. Anoki looks me up and down. Faye, I didn't know he was some lanky flaky blonde. His beady eyes glare at me. You know, you kind of remind me of someone, of a certain, never mind. I gave him a cursory glance at best. Did he know about my parentage? Probably. It wasn't that important to me either way. Aside from the Mizukage shamelessly flirting and the Tsuchikage developing Alzheimer's. Tell me, are you the one who prepared Uchiha Sasuke for the match against Omo? The Reikage interjects. Thank goodness. And if I was? I question back. The dark-skinned village leader blows hot air through his nose. Those were some cowardly tactics you had her use. The Reikage felt slighted that one of his candidates was defeated. He had went down in a rather boring fashion without much fanfare and flair. There wasn't a great clash between two opponents nor a drawn-out fight. Just a match which Sasuke played with her opponent, tested the waters, and went in for the kill at the right moment. In a way, it was a rather dull fight all summed up. I simply afforded her the highest percentage chance to overcome her opponent. I shrugged with an air of indifference. The Reikage didn't seem to like my remark, as he scowled. Have you no pride as a shinobi? He shoots. I snort. You can feed your pride to the dogs then, Reikage, if that is so important to you. If you wish to have pride, then you chose the wrong profession in life. His steely eyes glare straight into mine. Neither of us backed down, as I didn't really care how he felt about the matter. And then after a few more moments he starts to grin. That grin turned into a smile. A deep rumble came from his chest before it turned into a full-blown laughter. What? You've got balls, kid. I haven't had anyone actually speak to me like that in such a long time. I forgot what it felt like to be challenged. What? After he's done guffawing, he explains himself. You're right on all accounts. In the shinobi world, there are no such things as cowardly tactics. As they say, anything can happen on the battlefield. I'm going to tear a new one for not preparing Omoi, as well as you did with Uchiha Sasuke. Damn stupid wannabe rapper. At this point, I wasn't even going to try and comprehend what just happened. The conversation went serious into one direction before it veered off into the complete opposite. This time I found myself scratching the back of my head in wonder. Man, and I thought magi were weird. Shinobi people really take the cake with this one. The look on my face made the other Kage chuckle to themselves in mirth. So, besides all that, what did you call me here for, old man? A dog and pony show for you and your friends or something? He takes the pipe and blows a billow of smoke. Far from it. I hear that you have an exceptional ability for combat analysis from Kakashi. There were high praises from him and several others. All I ask of you is to merely facilitate a commentary on the next match for us to engage a discussion. That's a rather odd request to make. Why don't you get someone else to do it? I deflect. Besides, Kakashi and others were probably just blowing smoke. Naruto-kun, the Mizukage coups. Please? I'm greatly curious as to how in-depth your analysis can go. I blink. Was that a double entendre or was I just crazy? Was my intelligent response. Sarutobi Hiruzen gives a slightly perverse giggle which he immediately covers with a cough. You wouldn't want to disappoint the Mizukage now, would you? I glare at him and huff in annoyance. I begrudgingly acquiesce to his request. Fine, and will you stop batting your damn eyelashes at me? It's not doing anything. The Mizukage acts innocently and smiles. Damn that smile, damn that old man for calling me up here, and just for good measure, damn you too, Kakashi. Shoving my hands into the pockets of my jacket, I turn around and look down to the arena. I use this moment to take it all in. The balcony where the Kage were seated had a really good view of all the action from up here. I guess there were certain caveats to being a leader of your nation and all that. For the next match we have Haruno Sakura of Konohagakure versus Hyuga Neji of Konohagakure. There was a round of applause and cheers as the next two competitors forayed into the arena. It was more subdued than the first match as it was a matter of pride between two global powers. The second match was an internal matter with no significant consequences as Konoha wins either way, but for me it was just as important as the first match. For me it wasn't just Konoha versus Konoha. Not many people knew, but Haruno Sakura was an orphan that had no significant background. To most others, she was just a regular girl that just happened to be on the team with the last Uchiha and the son of a minister. Going into this match, Sakura had more to prove to anyone else in this tournament. And dare I say it, she had more to prove than Sasuke. She didn't have a special bloodline ability. Neither was she considered a prodigy. Just a hard-working person with a dream to save people with medicine and do well for the world. If someone were to ask me who I respected the most in this village, I would give it to Sakura. Do the competitors have anything to say before the match begins? The proctor raises a hand up in the air. I must apologize beforehand. Neji's voice rings throughout the arena. But you will be defeated. No amount of training nor preparation will do you justice. My eyes and the blood that runs through my veins have already assured me of my victory. It is destined for you to fall and for me to rise. Sakura gives him a smile only a doctor could with their patient. One that promised a lot of pain and humiliation in the next couple of minutes. Humph! Underneath that stoic and quiet demeanor of his, there was a good amount of pride, ego, and was that conceitedness? What hubris! For a Hyuga, let alone a branch member, he sure did like to spout a bunch of nonsense. It looks like there was going to be a lot more going into this match than I expected. I'm going to enjoy watching Sakura clock his head in at the right moment. Sakura's eyes scans her surrounding for a moment and spots me. We share a knowing look between us. Hyuga Neji was in for a rather rude awakening. Begin! A bit of banter occurred behind me that sparked a discussion among the village leaders. The majority of them concluded that due to both competitors excelling in hand-to-hand combat that the match heavily favored Hyuga Neji. With his bloodline limit and eyes, he would undoubtedly crush Haruno Sakura easily in a fair bout. Too bad this fight was going to be anything but fair. So Naruto-kun, who do you think will win? The Hokage asks for my prediction. Sakura, I answer simply. I could feel all 5 of their perplexed gazes on my back. They were waiting for further explanation of my choice. It was a 5-against-1 decision after all. I spent most of the time preparing Sakura for this matchup in particular against Neji. While his skills and abilities are exceptional, they have faults in them just like everything else. Simply put, you can say Neji is a one-trick pony, albeit an exceptional one-trick pony. I snort from my nose. It was the pot calling the kettle black. It took one to know one. Oh? And what makes you say that? Says the Mizukage with mirth in her voice. All Neji knows and excels at are the Hyuga family techniques. Outside of that, he isn't that versatile. While dangerous up close, if you decide to play the range game you can pick him apart. Same goes for the others. I accounted for most of the known techniques in his clan and assisted Sakura in developing a game plan based off that. Gaara chuckles, I didn't know you became such a studious scholar over the years. That's a lot of research you did. I shrug with indifference. Being with Tosaka over the years, I had picked up a few of her habits to research a subject thoroughly inside and out. It was a mage's duty to vet out any information as much as possible for the sake of understanding and expanding upon his or her thaumaturgy. But that's beside the point. That still doesn't mean he's a pushover. I've encountered quite a few Hyuga ninja over my life and they have an exceptional ability to kill a shinobi with only but a simple tap, notes the Rakage. He looks over to the Mizukage. If I remember correctly, Mizukage, one of your shinobi bodyguards has his own Byakugan that he pilfered after a duel. She smiles easily. Indeed. He had over half of his chakra points sealed off and had to go through rehabilitation for the next year or so. What's even worse is that they outnumbered the Hyuga shinobi considerably. A 10-to-1 engagement if I recall. They haven't moved yet. What are those damn brats doing down there? Having a stare-off? Grunts the Tsuchikage. Back in my old days, we just got it over with and bashed each other's skulls in. Sakura and Neji were settled into their own respective stances. Neji had already activated his mystic eyes. That confirmed it for both me and Sakura that he heavily favored using the gentle fist, or juken techniques. She inhales deeply. If I were you, I'd hold on to your seats, I cheekily say to them. There was a smirk plastered onto my face. It was more of a shit-eating grin, but who cares? Sakura raises her fist up above her head. Her chakra gathers up in her fist. It was all pushed up into one single chakra point. The amount was so much that it became visible to the naked eye and caused Neji to squint. It must have been blinding for him. She exhales. Her gloved fist smashes into the ground beneath her feet. The stadium erupts as the ground explodes violently. It was akin to Caliball going off on a smaller scale without the fire and space distortion. Monolithic slabs of rock are explode out from the epicenter. Dirt and rubble fly everywhere, completely destroying the surrounding environment. What strength! Someone exclaims behind me. Just like the previous matchup. A great plume of dirt and dust falls back down and settles at the ground floor. It momentarily obscures the vision of every spectator watching the match. Not exactly subtle now, is it? Horizon points out. No, far from it, but absolutely necessary, I answer. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Well, it seems like she's a rather messy cook, he replies flatly. Sakura shoves both of her hands in her utility pouch and produces a significant amount of shuriken and kunai. They're flicked with adequate speed and accuracy to Neji's last known location. Kaiten! His feet wobbles, but he manages to perform his defensive technique. A bubble of pure chakra extrudes from his hands as he spun on the spot to deflect the projectiles. It also dissipates the dirt and dust in the air. The moment he comes to a stop, his stance shifts slightly as if he were almost unbalanced by the terrain. Good. He was afraid of the sudden change of environment, that he played his trump card early. Just as we suspected, and proves my theory right that he was just like every Hyuga clan member. Exorbitantly reliant on family-style techniques only. There were only a few elemental attributes that were typical of Konoha shinobi. Shinobi hailing from this village normally were attuned with the element of fire. The second most common being the element earth, and the element water trailing behind not too far. The other two elements, wind and lightning, were part of an extreme minority to the population. Asuma and Kakashi, respectively, being the only known shinobi who were attuned to those elements. There was earth all around Neji, yet he didn't use an earth wall to protect himself, and instead relied on his special techniques. Sakura had distanced herself to the far end of the arena wall, while Neji had control of the middle ground. The girl is at a disadvantage. He has priority in the center of the arena. She's backed herself up against the wall. A pity. The Tsuchikage shakes his head. I disagree. True, but pay attention to the elevation between the two. They all lean in for a better look. Sakura had a few meters above her opponent. She was looking down at him from her spot. I see, she has the high ground. Even so, that's barely negligible. A few meters means nothing for a Hyuga. Especially one well versed in his clan's techniques. He can negate that difference in height, the short old man counters. He then immediately crosses his arms and snorts. Look at me, I must be going senile if I'm rooting for a damn Konoha shinobi of all things. Look again at Neji's feet. They're shifting constantly. I point out. The Kage quickly follows me up. I notice that as well. He's imbalanced. He's trying to find a comfortable foothold to engage his opponent, but he himself is unsure if he can properly execute with a rough surface. Humph, I still say it doesn't mean a damn thing. Once she's in range of his technique, he'll shut her down immediately. He stubbornly argues back out of pride for his chosen victor. I say nothing in return and continue to watch the bout. The conditions were in Sakura's favor, but from here on it was high risk, high reward plays. While the Hack Rokujian show was formidable, it didn't mean it was invincible. There were ways to counter the technique to prevent the user from beginning it. The obvious way was to stay out of range, which was a measly 10 meters from the user. They can't use it if they're not in range. Another effective way was to disrupt the user's footing at the time of activation. Neji makes the first move and blasts forward with a blurring speed. His form was that of a white streak crossing the distance to Sakura. His right palm extends out. He pushes with all his might. It jettisons out a stream of compressed air. The pink-haired girl dodges at the last moment. In her place, there was a deep indenture of the arena wall. Cracks webbed out all along the wall as a result. That's something I didn't know a Juken user could do. Luckily, Sakura had built up her reflexes over the months from my arrows. She accounted for it well enough, but barely. One solid hit, and that was all it took for the match to be over. High risk, high reward. Her foot stomps on the ground harshly. It erupts the earth beneath Neji, forcing him to jump into the air to avoid it. It gives her ample time to retreat and gain distance between them while he was stuck in the air. He's fast, but not terribly so. He pursues her with aggression, using his palms to thrust a vacuum of air to his target. Sakura deftly dodges again. "You're in my range," he announces. 10 meters. He thrusts his right palm forward first. It was an awfully telegraphed move that anyone could see, but it was fast. A lesser person would have been hit. Not Sakura. To her, the attack was coming at her a mile away. It misses her right arm by a hair's breadth. Too close of a call for my tastes, but it'll have to do. The two attacks come in the form of a jab with his left palm. They too miss. I could sense the frustration build up in Neji. He cocks his right arm back. His torso twists along with the motion, coiling up like a cobra for a strike. He roars as he strikes, but that too is for naught as his palm meets air. His feet shift. They're unbalanced by the jagged ground and loose gravel. It was a terrible situation for him to have his main form of attack hampered. Neji huffs. You dodged the opening of my technique." He looked confused, bewildered that someone had managed to avoid getting hit entirely. His eyes narrows at Sakura's rather limp right arm. "But not entirely so, how annoying. Looks like I have my work cut out for me." He readies his stance once more. A wider stance than usual to take account of the rough terrain. By that time, Sakura had healed up her arm and stretched it around. "You trained her to reopen her chakra points, didn't you, Naruto-kun?" Sarutobi speaks up. "She's an Irionin, or have you gone senile, old man?" I throw him a smirk. He gives a humored chuckle. "Indeed she is, but that begs the question of how did she dodge the opening of his technique? While it is certainly not impossible, it is rather extremely difficult, especially in such an enclosed area." "He's a creature of habit," I answer simply. Too predictable in his opening move. Too sure of himself and his family technique that they will not fail. After all, his success rate has been at 100% until now. "I see," chimes in the Mizukage. "Look again." He's opening his attack with a forward strike with his right palm, followed up by two successive strikes from his left palm before going back to a right and finishing off with a double palm thrust. Sakura dodges all of his attacks again with better success. No glancing blows this time. They dance around the stadium playing a dangerous game of cat and mouse. So far, Sakura had yet to go on the offensive, but she didn't need to. All she had to do was wait for the perfect opportunity to strike, and it would be game over. One solid hit to clock his head in. Patience is key here. Careful timing is required. Gaara follows her up. While undoubtedly skilled with the Hyuga technique, he fails to gain any substantial results, and is starting to taper off. Sloppy movements. Overextending too often compared to the start of the match. "Naruto, that was your game plan for Sakura, isn't it?" I say nothing in return, but he takes that as my confirmation. He crosses his fingers in front of his face and stares intently down below. Haruno Sakura going into this match was heavily outclassed by Hyuga Neji. He has over a year of experience over her. Better hand-to-hand, speed, and dexterity. But you made all of that null and void by having her destroy the stadium ground. The scales were tipped greatly in favor of the Hyuga. She balanced it by destroying it. The Reikage rumbles and he begins to laugh. "Haha! I like your style, boy." I simply shrugged my shoulders. It allotted her the highest possible chance for winning. Who says a fight has to be fair? Looking back down, the fighting had stopped and a lull of peace reigned over for a brief moment. Neji's chest was heaving heavily as he greedily sucked in air into his lungs. His face was red and sweating all over. His hair was matted against his forehead, and his pale white eyes were narrowed in anger and frustration. To the opposite of him, Sakura fared slightly better than Neji. Aside from that glancing blow to her right arm from their first series of engagements, she was fine. "You fight like a damn coward," he seethes out loud. "You should be ashamed. How can you call yourself a ninja?" Her opponent was infuriated. His pride was damaged. He had been publicly embarrassed by failing to hit her with his techniques that were renowned all across the continent. They were regarded as the epitome of taijutsu. There was nothing greater than the juken. And yet some no-named girl was practically making a fool out of him. A proverb brings into my mind of this situation. Pride comes before a fall. And Neji, being a son of the Hyuga clan, even only a branch member, had plenty of it. He was near exhaustion. He had backed himself up into a proverbial corner in the battlefield by wasting all his time and energy fruitlessly chasing her around the field. Neji knew this. Sakura most definitely did as well. Sorry, Sakura finally replies unapologetically. But I simply chose the route that afforded me the highest chance of winning against you. Her hands pulls out several kunai that had explosive tags attached to them. She augments her strength with chakra before throwing them at breakneck speeds at Neji. Kaiten! He spins on the spot and a dome of chakra appears once more, blocking the kunai and explosion that follows in suit. While he was distracted, Sakura smashes her fist to the ground and causes a trailing eruption to where he stood. As soon as his rotational spin stops, he jumps high into the air to avoid it. That was check. For the second time of the fight, he's sent up high into the air courtesy of Sakura. But this time he was prepared and adjusted accordingly. He twists his body and blasts his hands into the sky to propel him downward to Sakura. Neji cocks his right palm back as he allowed gravity to do the rest of the work. Sakura bends her knees and responds in kind. She aims carefully and lowers her profile. The sun wasn't to Neji's back. The angle of attack was just right. Her eyes narrow. Shinaro! Sakura sidesteps the palm thrust, and it sails over her shoulder. Her retaliatory punch smashes into his abdomen with such force that his eyes bug out considerably. Blood and spittle fly everywhere as his body folds in on itself. She follows through with the punch and smashes his body into the ground. The floor beneath my feet shook from the impact, and I blink. I whistle softly to myself as the arena floor is destroyed even further than it already is. I blink again, and there stood Haruno Sakura standing triumphantly over Neji's unconscious body. Winner! Haruno Sakura! Silence reigns upon the crowd of onlookers. They were shocked. The favored clansman had lost to some orphan. It was beginning to become unbearable as Sakura looked around nervously. And so, I clapped. It was slow at first, but it gained moment, and suddenly more and more people began to join in. The crowd was delighted with the display put forth by the two contestants. It was soon deafening to my ears at how loud everyone was yelling and screaming. A marvelous display of skill and tactics, applauds the Sandaime Hokage, and cunning usage of the environment to turn it into her favor. Anoki begrudgingly agrees, while the other three simply supplied supportive comments and notes about the match. The general agreement was that Haruno Sakura had flipped the tables onto Hyuga Neji by causing widespread damage and playing a lethal game of chase. There were faults such as her being a bit too reckless with her powers and should show restraint. I waved it all away. That wasn't the point with this match. The previous round with Sasuke held no significant context with her fight. She played her part, and played to what the general public wanted to see. They expected the finesse and speed as expected of an Uchiha, and gave it to them. For Sakura? This was sending a message to everyone watching that she didn't need any special bloodline trait to win. I throw my head back to Hiruzen. I didn't really do too much analysis on the fight nor commentate, but it kept you five entertained well enough, I suppose, seeing how much chatter went on. The Sandaime Hokage puffs on his pipe. I assure you we were all fairly entertained. The discussion was lively and informative with another opinion on hand. I hum in agreement offhandedly. Then by your leave? I'm fairly certain Kakashi might be thinking I got myself into a trouble, or something. I pause. Who am I kidding? He probably doesn't care too much. I share a small laugh to myself. The Hokage catches the inside joke about Kakashi being nonchalant and indifferent to many things. No. You're free to go. Thank you for giving an old man some company with his friends, Naruto-kun. He dismisses and I bow to everyone out of formality. The Mizukage winks and makes a playful gesture for me to come visit her later on. Yeah, no way. Not a snowball's chance in hell was I walking into that trap. Besides, Rin would absolutely murder me. Terumi May reminded me of a certain Livia Gelata Ito felt. Although I think Livia was a lot more forward than May by a long shot. The brawl between Livia and Rin in one of the sparring rooms of the clock tower was legendary. So much so that even the queen of the clock tower had reined in on the matter and made sure to keep the two separated as much as possible. I scratched the back of my head and sighed loudly to myself. It was time to head back to Kakashi and get an update from Miram. The little soiree with the Kage had momentarily put my mind off the matter, but now that that was over, I needed to get my head back into the game and on to more pressing matters. Anything? Miram and I were on our way back to where the general audience were seated. The ANBU controlled by the King of Rats was lightly in front, keeping up the guise of being an escort even though we were the only individuals in the tunnel. No, he pauses. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I can share those sentiments. It meant we were still playing the guessing game of who's involved in this plot. What about the ministers? Have you tried them yet? Absent, he replies. Absent? What? What do you mean? He stops. Our suspect number 1 is coincidentally absent in spectating his son's performance today. I've scoured the arena along with my rats and he's not here. That's not suspicious in any way, shape, or form, I mumble out. Indeed, the rat's voice was full of amusement. Worry not though, Amiya-kun, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And Toshiyuki Tsubasa is plenty human. I resist the urge to roll my eyes. There was so much irony in that statement. Anyways, we'll let things develop further and see from there. All of the magical seals have been removed. We've ruined at least step 1 through 3 of whatever they are planning. That was good to know. It meant that both Michael and whoever that he was in league with would be forced to use a more direct means to achieve their objectives, thereby exposing them clearly to us and everyone else. The bait had been set, now it was time to wait. This is simply exciting, Amiya-kun. His tone was giddy. Why, I haven't had much fun in a game of cat and mouse in ages. The look on Valdemjong's face when he realizes what's wrong will be pure bliss. This time, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Of course, Miram's left arm would be taking enjoyment of a crisis waiting to happen. His ANBU turns and walks backwards while he expressed his joy. The thrill of it is intoxicating. I'll enjoy seeing his face being outsmarted and GHRKK. His voice suddenly stops as 2 nails pierces through the ANBU he's controlling. I flinch slightly as blood splatters all of my face and clothing as the body is simply torn in half. The lower extremity going to the left wall, while the top smacked against the right wall closest to me with a sickening squelch. The nails retract back into the darkness before they're shot towards their next target. I trace Kancho and Bakuya in an instant. The married blades appearing in my left and right hands respectively. I bring them up and deflect the nails away to the side. What in the bloody hell? Who ruined my ride? Miram crawls out from under the hood. I'll turn them into a goddamn vegetable for this. My face scrunches up as I got a quick look at the nails before they're retracted back into the darkness ahead. They looked awfully familiar. Too familiar. Who uses nails that had chains tied at their ends? I make a choking noise. No, my voice was faint. Barely a whisper. Those belong to Dash. Her figure explodes out from the shadow, her weapons coming down like a guillotine blade onto Miram's form. I step forward and strike out against her attack. Steel on steel clangs rancorously in the dark tunnel. Sparks fly everywhere as our strikes struggle against each other. My eyes widen at the sheer strength of her blow. My arm was struggling to match it even though it was reinforced. I could feel Kancho groaning and cracking in my hand at the force of the strike. GHRK. I grunt as I push back. The woman hasn't deigned it enough to divide her full attention on me yet. I spin Bakuya to the point there it's like a table saw blade. A bright blue line glowed at the tip of the sword as I bring it down to her neck to sever it. She notices me now. Her other nail comes up and smashes into the black blade, completely shattering my projection with ease. I quickly project Bakuya again and move to sever her arm that was locked with Kancho. Her leg snaps out and strikes directly into my abdomen, sending me skidding back a dozen meters or so. Blood and spit fly out of my mouth, but I clamp down on the yelp of pain that made its way into the back of my throat. I sense Miram crawling up my back to rest on my shoulder. I had brought him enough time for him to escape. I'm certain that the actual Miram would be pleased to know that his left arm wasn't skewered into the ground by a servant. My hand rubs my stomach. That kick would have blown out my organs if I hadn't reinforced them. I shift my gaze towards my assailant. It was a slender, beautiful woman with long lavish purple, whitish hair. Her outfit could be considered scandalous and racy for the fact that all she wore was a pair of thigh-high boots and a purple top that generously showed a portion of her breasts. But the one thing that drew my sights was the covering of her eyes. Rider. Her head slightly tilts. It was incredibly unnerving. It sent a chill down my spine. I get a better look at her. In the back of mind, there was something incredibly wrong about her. Something that was so off-kilter that it stopped all my thoughts to a screeching halt. I blink. Her skin! It was pale. Paler than what I remembered it being. Like vines growing wildly and uncontrolled, their angry red lines that raced all across her skin. Alter Rider. What the hell is going on? Her knees bend and she blasts forward in a blur. I throw all caution to the wind and bring out Saber's sword from its scabbard. The two nails clash against the invisible blade. It took both of my hands to stop her thrust. I skid couple of meters back as a result. Alter Rider puts more pressure into her attack to snap the blade like how she did with Kansho and Bikuya. But it was a pointless endeavor as Saber's sword was something else entirely. Because of that, we're locked into a stalemate momentarily. My mind races for alternatives to the situation I've found myself in. Her face looks up to mine. There was a blank expression from what I could tell. What in the actual hell is going on right now? When she looks at me, Alter Rider gives me a teasing and knowing smirk. A sickening giggle could be heard before she leans forward. Her face was inches from mine. I could feel her hot breath on my skin. This was way too damn close for comfort. My arms were burning in protest. They were shaking. I had already reinforced them to their limits. I was human. Therefore I adhered to physical limitations. She was not. She was a heroic spirit. A being that was above and beyond mortal limits. I grunt and attempt to push back. I needed some space between us. No wonder Archer did his best to avoid direct confrontations. D-rank strength absolutely sucks ass. As quickly as the pressure came, it relented. Alter Rider backed off and dissipated in a burst of purple lights. Humph, she's smart. She knew I was cracking ever so closely into her head. There was a tone of frustration in his voice. What in the name of Brunestad is a heroic spirit doing all the way out here? Is she the one that drew up the seals? And if so, why were they so butchered and bastardized to what they were? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I greedily gulped in air as I sagged down and took a knee. I didn't care about that right now. Too many questions with too little answers. Everyone needed to get out of this place as soon as possible. Miriam, we need to warn the others. The invisible sword in my hand sheathes itself back inside me. Everything suddenly took a turn for the worse. Something bad was about to happen momentarily. I could feel it in my bones. It was nauseating. I need to get to Kakashi. Fast. Then get to it, Amiya-kun. I bolt out of the tunnels like a bat out of hell and ran towards where Kakashi and everyone else should be sitting. I had a feeling that I didn't have that much time left. I look all around me and note that neither did these people if they weren't evacuated. Kakashi! I yell at the top of my lungs as I flew down the stairs. The next match was already ongoing between Daisuke and his opponent. My voice cuts through the crowd and everyone in the vicinity turns their attention towards me. I could hear people gasping at the sight of blood sprayed all over me. Kakashi rockets out of his seat in alarm. Naruto! What the hell happened to you? You're covered in blood. Yeah. I realized that. I stressed out. It's not my blood. I'm perfectly fine. We need to get everyone out of the arena. Now. All around me, people were gawking and gaping. Fingers pointed at me. Several other shinobi were out of their seats and making their way towards the commotion. Naruto! Calm down. He grabs my shoulders. You're causing a scene here. I didn't care that I was causing a scene. That was the furthest thing on my mind right now. Yo! Hataki-san! What's going on here? A Konoha shinobi comes up behind me. He's covered in blood. What the hell happened? Did someone attack him? He doesn't look hurt to me. Maybe someone attacked him? More and more people were getting out of their seats to see what was going on. They were crowding around the area. More shinobi than civilians. I had a funny feeling coursing through my stomach. I didn't like the fact that I was surrounded on all sides. There were a variety of shinobi wearing different headbands representing their country. A majority being Konoha, but a few other nations sprinkled in here and there from what I can see. Oh, Amiyakun, I'm getting a strange vibe here. It was Miram whispering his thoughts to me. You feel it too, don't you? I growl in frustration. As if I didn't already have a strange vibe going on after getting assaulted by an altar rider. Someone who should be very long gone and up in the throne of heroes. No, I don't. It's not like we were just ambushed a moment ago by a corrupt heroic spirit Miram. I could feel him glaring at me. Don't be sarcastic with my Amiyakun. That feeling is getting stronger. It feels like a compulsion spell. As if it's to make you sleep. I blink. Hey. I'm feeling pretty tired all of a sudden, someone says from the crowd. Why yeah. I kinda wanna just take an nap. The person yawns loudly. Just like that. One by one they all started to slowly collapse. Those who were standing fell to their knees and were knocked out then and there. All around me people slumped forward in their seats. The civilians spectating the match were the first to be out cold. Academy students and recently graduated genin shinobi were also greatly affected. Individuals who were more experienced shook the compulsion off and dispelled it with a burst of chakra. A massive explosion rocks the arena. My eyes tracked to where it came from and a column of smoke could be seen from the balcony where the Kage were seated. What's going on? Are we under attack? Someone shouts. I rolled my eyes. Idiot! Of course we are. A sizable group of shinobi jumps overhead and lands in front of the railings. They were all garbed in black and gray clothing and wore a ski mask that covered their facial features except for their eyes. All of them wore an otogekure headband along with a black and gray snake-patterned scarf. Except for one that stood out among them all. It was an Anbu with a black coat and a plain white and red mask. My eyes narrow in pure disgust. A traitor. I hated traitors with a burning passion. Kakashi, Guy, Anko, Asuma, and Kurenai were on their feet, standing a little ways behind me. He must be the one that caused the genjutsu, Guy mutters to everyone. Who is he? Why is an ANBU personnel betraying us? Asuma asks. I didn't care for who he was or what his reasons are. You're surrounded, Konoha shinobi. Surrender, and we may let you live. One of the Otogekure shinobi taunts. I glance around and confirm we were indeed surrounded. 11 Otogekure shinobi, including the ANBU turncoat. No. I breathe in and close my eyes. All I am surrounded by are fools and dead men. Trace on. A cocking hammer goes off inside my mind. It fills my body with coldness throughout. All 27 of my magic circuits thrown to life. I project 2 swords for every enemy in the vicinity. The moment they're traced and given a physical form, I hone them in on their respective targets, and they shoot out with the speed of a bullet. The projected weapons meet their mark. All 22 swords skewer their targets into the ground. One for the heart. The other for the head. Only one set of swords had missed their mark, and that was because that traitor had successfully deflected them. He was more skilled than I had anticipated. Aren't you a resourceful one? I give the traitor a cold glare. No, his voice is muffled slightly from behind the mask. But I could hear he was laughing at me. Mocking me. You were simply too slow for me. Oh? I cock an eyebrow. Forgive me for underestimating you. Allow me to fix that. I trace Archer's bow in my left hand and a noble phantasm on the right. The noble phantasm had a strange appearance for a sword. It was a pitch-black weapon, with a few small edges coiling around the thin core, spiraling around the center, curving outward a bit. A small grin forms on my face as he visibly steps back. Not so sure of yourself now, are you? I take my time to nocking the blade and pulling back the string. The metallic frame of the bow creaks and groans. I train my sights at the center mass of his body. Go into the red plains. He hops onto the railing and jumps to the roof across the arena. He's fast, but not fast enough. I pump enough prana into the weapon and turn into a broken phantasm. A useful fire and forget type of projectile. I smirk at the futility of his retreat. Grunting. The noble phantasm that was once wielded by the hero Beowulf fires out onto my target. It turns into a magic bullet enveloped in a red light that exceeds the speeds of Mach 10. It didn't matter what my foe did. Parry. Repulse. Avoidance. Block. Grunting would simply adjust accordingly to such possibilities as long as my sights were trained on them. He jumps over it. Barely. He even had the gall to face towards my direction to taunt me. My smirk was still plastered on my face. Grunting corrects its path midair and comes back around for him once more. He wasn't able to twist his body to dodge it. The angry red projectile slams straight into his torso, plucking him out of the sky like a pigeon. A roar of pain emits from him as he fell from the sky and crashed into the ground below. That'll teach you to be smug with me. I turned around. To my surprise, everyone was just standing there, mouths gaped open, gawking at me. My brow furrows. What? That, so many swords? Spoke a stunned Kurenai. And so fast. I didn't even see them, followed up Asuma. You know, Kakashi starts off with a deadpan tone. I can't help but not be amazed by it every time I see it. There were similar comments made from the others, but I ignored them in favor of surveying the arena. I had only managed to kill off a small portion of the enemy forces. There were still many more Otogekyu shinobi fighting against other shinobi and murdering non-combatants in their sleep. Some were taking their time and used their kunai. Others used wide-range elemental techniques to kill people in one big swoop, like a scythe through a field of grass. My heart races. My blood boils. It was senseless mayhem and murder. The systematic purging and genocide of Konoha's inhabitants and anyone who didn't wear a sound note headband. Anger was coursing through my veins. I wanted these people to be dead. These invaders didn't deserve the chance to be saved. I wouldn't even bother to give them a second chance. If they begged for mercy, I'll simply run them through with a sword. A bright flash, and I was in my red plane mystic code. Kakashi. I called to him. We need to wake these people up and escort them somewhere safe. Are Konoha's standard protocols still the same concerning an invasion from another country after the wall has been breached? By now ANBU and the emergency response teams should be evacuating everyone beneath the Hokage monument. Once all non-combatants have been evacuated, standard procedures concerning a counteroffensive goes into effect. I bite my lower lip. That was going to take too long. The amount of people exposed were going to be too great. The numbers in my head were already piling up to the size of a mountain. Konoha was good, but they weren't that good against people that were actively targeting innocent people. A series of footsteps came barreling down the hallway. It was a 4-man Konoha Chunin squad. They all quickly saluted to the Jonin, and particularly to Kakashi. Kakashi-san, what are your orders? The man looks around and nods to himself. A plan already formulated in his head. Send word to all 4-man cells and able-bodied shinobi to clear out all enemy combatants wearing an Otogekyu headband. Once we've secured the arena, we'll wake up the civilians and escort them to the evacuation zone. After that we'll... Kakashi was interrupted as the floor beneath our feet began to rumble violently. It was so great that it knocked almost everyone off their feet. Then a blood-curdling scream pierced through the air. It made the hair on my skin stand on its end. Goosebumps forming all over. There was a sense of dread filling the bottom of my stomach. I knew what made that noise. What the fuck just happened? Someone curses loudly. No! More like what the fuck was that horrible screaming noise? I tightened my grip on the ebony bow. Amiya-kun. What? Keep caution. There's something most foul and repulsive lurking behind the scenes. Miram sounded awfully unsure of himself. It was entirely uncharacteristic of him to be like this. But I heeded his warning. You don't have to tell me twice. Off the corner of my eye, I spot an enemy group heading my way. 5 in total. I calmly knock an arrow and fire off 10 in rapid succession. The force of the arrows sent them flying backwards dozens of meters back. They were dead before they even hit the ground. I'm heading up to the roof, I announced suddenly. I'll be right back. It roars again in the distance from beyond the wall. I needed to get a better look at what was going on. Great columns of smoke rose hundreds, if not thousands of feet into the air. Whole districts were set ablaze haphazardly. The yells and screams of frightened people running away from the fighting echoed all around me. My chest tightens. It was all starting to bring back memories of when I was a child. Walking through those harrowing streets alone. Blazing fires all around. Buildings crumbling down. People dying left and right. Asking. Begging. Yelling for help. To save them from this nightmare. I remember it all so clearly still. I lost everything of myself there. The hatred. The anger. The hope. The self that was me and the dreams that I had before I saw his smile. Everything. Whatever I was before Kuretsugu saved me, was burned away with the fires. Not again. I swore to myself. This day, and never again. Well, third time's the charm. Isn't that right, Amiya-kun? I spin around at the sudden voice behind me, and the sight that greets my eyes staggers me back several paces. The thing smiles maliciously. Blue eyes stare intently into my own blue eyes. It was like seeing a reflection. A horrible, monstrous, and perverted version of myself. My head spins. Inaudible sounds were being emitted from my mouth. I couldn't possibly grasp what was unraveling before me. My hands shake. My knees buckle. Why you? I shakily raise a finger at him. W what? Who? No W what the fuck are you? This was too much. This was way too much for me to take in all at once. It's just too much. Allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Avenger. Chapter 14. The Sword of Promised Victory. The King of Rats, the left arm of Miram Solomon, looked back and forth between Amiya Naruto and the recently introduced servant, Avenger. By now, Naruto had taken a knee due to being in a catatonic state. Being in the presence of Avenger had some severe adverse effects on him. He had attempted to probe the boy's mind and get in contact with him, but there was no response. No feedback from an external stimuli. He was actively shutting everything out. Miram cursed. He looks back at a smirking Avenger pointedly. His beady red eyes looks him up and down, taking it all in and making note of every little thing. So you're the incarnation of all the world's evil, I take it? The black-haired boy tilts his head. I sense a twinge of disappointment in your voice. Humph, I expected a lot more than a dark clone of Amiya-kun here. A little cliché, don't you think? His shoulders shrug in response. I assure you that it wasn't by choice. His genetic makeup was the only one available on hand at the time, and was the only one that had touched upon the grail. Besides, he brings up his right arm and clenches his hand. I got a neat little gift from him. Wouldn't you agree? That explains where the missing arm of his went, and why I sensed his signature down in the caverns then, Miram mutters to himself. So you wouldn't mind telling me what your game plan is, hmm? It didn't hurt to try to ask before resorting to other means of extracting information out of the heroic spirit. He wasn't all too thrilled in poking inside the head of a being that embodied all the curses and evils of the world. While he was an inquisitive being by nature, he was cautious enough to not go prying into things that could kill him, or worse. Avenger breathes in the air deeply before speaking. I guess you can say I have two goals. Two desires, if you will. He holds up two fingers. One of them points to the frozen form of Naruto. Obviously, I want him dead. People die when they are killed, and he simply refuses to stay dead. Stubborn as a bull, but I can respect that greatly. It's admirable. Miram couldn't help but agree with the statement about Naruto. He was as stubborn as they came, if not more so. To his knowledge, Amiya Naruto had come knocking on Akasha's doorsteps a total of 3 times so far. The first time when he was a child by the fire, the second when his heart was pierced by Lancer, and the most recent one with his arm being blown off and bleeding out underneath Fuyuki City's caverns. The boy simply refused to die. And as for my second one, well, Avenger looks around himself at all the carnage. You can see that's a work in progress. I was given a wish to see the darkness within humanity's heart. I desire to fulfill that wish by bringing upon a hellish nightmare to the world. Miram's face scrunches up in distaste. I'll take a wild shot in the dark and say that wish belongs to Kogo Mind Kirai. Avenger grins in satisfaction. Indeed. I was left bereft without a wish after I was harshly rejected by Amiya Kuretsugu. He spits the name out like it was poison. I showed him a world that he desired, and he thought it to be unfair. So when he rejected me, I sought another individual to give me a wish. To give me a purpose. And there. I found him, just lying in a pool of my black mud, dying. There was a manic look of glee on Avenger's face. He had a wish. So I used his to open up a hellish portal on Fuyuki City in this place. I cursed Emiya Kuritsugu when he rejected me. I cursed him to a faraway land where he was a stranger and an enemy to all. Never to be able to leave to see his daughter ever again. Ha ha ha. A hand comes up to hold his head as he laughed wildly. Ha, you can't even imagine what I wanted to actually to do to him for revenge, but beggars can't be choosers. He nonchalantly shrugs his shoulders. So with that out of the way, it's time I got rid of the roach that never dies. The malignant heroic spirit whistles a jaunty tune as he projected two reverse-grip black blades that looked more like a beast's claws and fangs. They were wicked and jagged with protrusions running about the course of the main blade. He flourished them around with a spin in his hands as he took his time. Miriam glanced down at Naruto's still form. Come on! Snap out of it, kid! Or else you and I are going to be minced meat in a couple of seconds. When the King of Rats looked back over to Avenger, he was already upon them with a wicked smile. The left arm needed more time. While he could leave Naruto to save himself, it wouldn't be prudent to his health if Rin were to ever find out. So as far as he knew, he was stuck in the same boat with Naruto. Ha, so! Any last words before I parade around this backwater cesspool with your body, my little hero? He pauses and leans forward for any response. No? Well. He's interrupted by a whisper he didn't catch. What did you say? I couldn't hear you. Speak up. Avenger cups an ear for effect. I said. Trace on. Denial. Anger. Bargaining. Depression. Acceptance. The 5 stages of grief. It all happened so fast and all at once that my mind and body simply shut down. The massive influx of raw emotions and information flooding in caused me to collapse to my hands and knees. The shock of seeing Ingramainu, Avenger, in all its unholy glory for the first time before my eyes shocked me to my core. I wanted to deny that the thing before me wasn't Avenger. But the things that I saw in my mind said otherwise. The curses. The pain. The anguish. All of it came running into me full force. Then anger quickly followed suit at the sheer stupidity of myself and at Avenger. The things he has done and yet to do sparked a flame inside me. It was wrong. That very thing before me was the definition of wrong. Anger quickly dissolved into bargaining. Why did it rear its ugly head back again so soon? What were its reasons? What was the point of the persecution of the masses? How could I even possibly stand a chance? All those times fighting servants and other beings were with the help of Saber and Tosaka. Here, I was by myself, alone against the monstrosity of humanity. Depression settled in. I was reminded why I ran. Why I decided it was best if I went back home and to play hero. When it mattered most, I failed. I thought I would be able to handle the thought of loss. Strangers, people who I would never talk to on a normal basis, I could reconcile with. But when it came down to those who I cared for the most, I broke down. I shattered like glass. I crumpled like a house of cards. I failed to shut my heart out like Archer. To callously play with the scales of balance on the priority of the greater good. I told myself I could do it. I lied to myself that I can do it. And when the time came, I didn't. I couldn't bear the thought of looking to Tosaka after the cataclysmic failure of dismantling the Grail. I killed her sister and failed to protect Saber. And so I ran. I ran back home to find some place to be hero and meet my end. That was all fine in the end as I was helping people, right? But that was what Archer did. He went gallivanting all over the world and made a contract the world. He stepped on one too many toes and ungrateful people who turned their backs on him. Shinobi people. In their paranoia they thought he was the mastermind behind their source of conflicts and strife. And so they persecuted him, arrested him, judged him in a kangaroo court, and had him publicly hanged. Somewhere along the line I realized the folly of it all. The idiocy of myself. The warped psyche of my mind and its thought process. Those eyes, your eyes aren't human, boy. A machine masquerading as a human. He wasn't wrong, yet he wasn't entirely correct either. Acceptance. I accepted that I was wrong. I accepted that I was foolish and stupid. And I accepted that I had problems that needed to be worked out. That I needed to go home. Back to Fuyuki City. Back to home. But more importantly, back to Tosaka. I bet she was in pain as much as I, and I left her there. I accept that I'm a horrible person. But I refuse to let it be like that. I would fix them. I would right the wrongs and make things better. No more running. No more crying. No more cowardice. It was time to face the demons in the dark. The demons that I ran away from. Avenger walks up to me casually. He couldn't see my face. Ha, so? Any last words before I parade around this backwater cesspool with your body, my little hero? He pauses and leans forward for any response. No? Well. I mutter 2 words back. A hammer cocks back in my mind. Prana and OD filter in through my circuits. The board lights up green. All projections were on standby. He leans forward. What did you say? I couldn't hear you. Speak up. I said. Trace on. A dozen black keys are traced into existence above his head and shot downwards with the force of a bullet. His eyes widen at the sense of danger and flips backwards, all the while dodging more and more keys of providence. Each one of them pierced into the concrete roof up to the hilt of the blade like it was butter. There was a small measure of satisfaction in me at seeing him frantically dodge the holy sacraments of the church. They were specifically designed to intervene spiritually against the concept of evil. Each blade held the concept of holy baptism to cleanse the target, and had the ability to lock a person's body down if their shadows were pierced. Phew, glad you came to your senses, Amiya-kun, or we were going to be etched into history. Miram wipes a bead of sweat off his brow. What took you so long anyways? I stand up with my back straight, finally reconciling with myself. I think after this, Miram, it's time we head home. He hums in agreement. Yes, that does sound good, but might I remind you that there's the incarnation of all the world's evil standing in front of us? You should probably deal with that first. Avengers belts a laugh at Miram's words. Him? Dealing with me? This time he holds his stomach as he guffaws. Saber was twice the person this faker ever was, and she failed to put me down permanently. What makes you think he can even stand a chance against me? I smile melancholy at him. A forlorn look on my face. Now was the time to use it. There would be no other moment except for this. The pinnacle of all holy swords in existence. One of the last God-forged weapons, a last phantasm, forged by the planet as the crystallization of the wishes of mankind and stored and tempered within the planet. I unsheathed it from Avalon and pulled the blade out with it still being wrapped within invisible air to conceal its appearance. But it was more than enough for Avenger to take a wary step back at the sight of it. Scared and remain you? I tilt my head and brandish the tip towards him. Fey, big whoop. What about it? He twirls his 2 blades in his hands. I structurally analyze them to the bone. Torich, the left fang grinder, and Zarek, the right fang grinder. They were sword breakers. One to catch the blade and the other to either shatter it or attack the opponent. A small grin tugs at my lips at the prospect. I would love to just see him try and shatter Saber's sword. Do you have enough curses stored up? I slide into a ready posture. And remain you? A manic smile splits his face. Amiya! He roars my name into the air and it signals the start of the fight. We both blur and cross the measly distance of 30 meters almost instantaneously. By the time we meet in the middle, I was already swinging downwards diagonally at his torso. Avenger's right sword Zarek comes up to catch the blade in mid-swing. A resounding clang resonates like a bell. The sword was so corrupt that it was actually managing to expose a part of the blade. It was negating invisible air to a degree. In response, I merely pressed down some more and like the sound of glass shattering. Zarek snaps in pieces. It only stopped me for the briefest of moments. His left sword Torich comes up and punches the sword away, redirecting it away from his torso. It barely misses. He kicks and backflips away while projecting another Zarek into existence. He cocks both arms back and throws them. The sounds they made while spinning in the air were like a buzz saw. They were shoddily traced, which made it all the easier for me to smack and reflect them aside. Avenger notices and traces more and more to bide some time. It was beginning to bog me down with how many he was able to project into the world. They are thrown with such speed even the afterimages they create are blurred. My mind was on an autopilot-like mode. I knew none of them made it through because I wasn't injured yet, and the constant staccato of metal on metal reassured me. In less than a heartbeat we trade over 100 blows. The incarnation of evil traced over 50 pairs of Torich and Zarek to throw at me. All of them deflected or shattered as they met my blade. My eyes narrow at how he was keeping his distance after our first engagement. I was a little surprised at how easily I was able to overpower his strike with my own, let alone push against him. I was certain that he as a heroic spirit would be able to barrel through me, but that wasn't the case. His strength rank must have been lower than mine. A low-level servant then. But still dangerous nonetheless. I flood prana into my legs. Time to test out a suspicion I have. In that instant I appear right before him. His eyes widen at the suddenness of it. The sword in my hand is swung like a flash of light. It couldn't be seen by normal measures. I strike for the heart, neck and head all at once. 3 slices all launched at once, any one of them being a fatal blow for sure to damage his spiritual core. He blocks the first blow for his head frantically. When Torich and Zarek meet, my arms struggle just for the barest of seconds before I push forward with a bit of resistance. Avenger pushes back and ducks under the blade. I redirect the blade to go for his neck and instead of blocking, he opts to continue dodging instead. He fails to fully protect his chest and I'm greeted with first blood. Albeit, it was more of a scratch than anything else. But it proved a suspicion of mine right. The servant Avenger was weak. Weaker than me at least. Archer in comparison only had D rank strength. This meant that Avenger had an abysmally low and paltry rank of E. That was wholesomely pathetic for a heroic spirit in terms of direct combat. Good for me, bad for him. I keep my eyes trained on him. He still had his magecraft. His black mud and shadows. I know his thaumaturgy exceeded mine well beyond my comprehension. So what was the thought process in his head for using projection-based magic instead of his curses? They were far more potent and stronger. Was he mimicking me just to rub salt in the wounds? A faker of a faker? Or was it something else? Maybe he couldn't use all the world's evils just yet? Was that the reason why he seemed so weak? Was that the reason why he was invading Konohagakure with Michael? I push that aside for now. I'll get my answers when I have Avenger's body skewered into the ground with my sword. A roar rumbles in the distance. If it could be, it was louder than ever before. I glance in its direction before returning to Avenger. What is that? He smirks. Oh, you know, a little present and an insurance on my part just in case if things don't go as planned. You know, like a plan B. I'm reminded that over half of Konohagakure was set ablaze right now. The roar of the flames almost drowned out the yelling and screaming down in the streets below. Civilians and innocents all running for safety while the shinobi battled it out in the midst of them. Collateral damage was inevitable with how close and intense the fighting was. That was the reason why he was stalling me. The longer he kept me here, the more people would die. He was holding me back. That's why he was primarily playing keep away with me. And Alta Rider was nowhere to be found. So who knows what she was up to? That made me even more alert than I already was. I moved to get away from this fight. Avenger blocks my path. I was beginning to wonder how long it would take for you to realize what was going on. He flourishes his sword breakers. While killing you would have made things so much easier, stalling you was the original plan. The inhuman roar in the distance was definitely louder than the previous one. I was sure of it. Avenger was lying about it being a plan B. Whatever was making that sound was definitely his endgame goal. Amiya-kun, you feel that buildup of prana out in the distance? The magnitude of it is simply enormous. It's increasing at an exponential rate. I bite my lip. Yeah, I feel it too, alright, and I'm not liking it. You need to be done with this fight and get to a higher vantage point to see what in the name of Akasha is making that sound. No need to tell me twice. So are you going to? His words get caught up in his throat as he is forced to block an overhead swing with both blades. It locks both of our swords and we're caught in a sudden stalemate. Ha! Trying to pull a fast one on me, aren't ya? I got your sword now. It was my turn to smirk at him. Strike air, hammer of the Wind King. The wind being released created a gale made out of super high-pressure condensed air that was powerful enough to easily crush and blow away armies and fling stone slabs weighing several tons into the air as if it were nothing. A horrid look spreads across Avenger's face as he was right beneath it. Gahurk. The blast of invisible air being unleashed was so strong it actually collapsed a part of the roof that we were on, and we both fell down into the spectator stands below. By this point, the stadium had been mostly evacuated with pockets of civilians here and there. Luckily none of them were below us. Gaharchk. Avenger hacked up a mouthful of blood and spat it out on the ground. Hey, you're a lot stronger than I thought, Amiyakun. I didn't know you could do that. He grabs his my right arm and tears the red cloth off. The right arm underneath the holy shroud of Martin twitches. My grip tightens around the handle of my sword. I don't want to pull out anything serious for now, so I'm going to have to take an L on this one. He claps his hands twice. Rider! His voice sing-songs out. The innate sixth sense in the back of my head told me to duck. It didn't matter where or what. I had to duck. The corrupt servant appears behind me and I twist my body to the right, and narrowly dodge a nail linked to a chain sail overhead. I lose my footing and stumble on all four trying to get back up. Alta Rider is already upon me and snaps a kick into my chest. The force of it sends me barreling through the hard concrete ground. I sheath the sword and roll with the motions. Everything was a blur. Medusa knew how to kick like a goddamn mule. I push against the ground with both hands to propel myself into the air and trace Archer's matte black straight bow. 3 arrows, all charged with prana, enough to level a house with each one, are launched towards Rider in rapid successive fire. They were like 3 flashes of light. The purple-haired servant used her chains like a whip and swatted them aside. My feet land on the ground and I skid a meter back before finally coming to a rest. I cough up a sizable load of blood and spit it to the side. One of my hands goes to nurse the area where she kicked me. The Red Plane Mystic Code barely withstood that attack. Not even reinforcement did much this time. She compensated for the reinforcement from last time. Damn it, I swore. She got me good, a broken rib. It was starting to become a chore to breathe easily now. You idiot, you got careless, Miriam berates into my ear. You allowed him to monologue and stall for help. Now we're dealing with 2 servants. I click my tongue in annoyance. Can't you just enthrall her already? Are you daft? Did she kick you in the head as well, you moron? The incarnation of the world's evils is standing right before us. There's no telling what could happen if I dare to peek in there. Alright, so that's a no, a big no. Avenger was healed back up now. Alta Rider was to the side of him, obediently like an attack dog. Remember, if she takes those blindfolds of hers off, look to close your eyes. If she turns you into stone, we're done for. I know. I bite out as they both begin to charge towards me. A pincer move. Avenger to my left. Alta Rider to the right. They weren't going to allow me to play keep away and fight from a distance. I pull out Saber's sword once more and ready myself for a world of inevitable pain. Just this once, I allowed myself to swear. Fuck me. For one, Uchiha Sasuke, Genin of Konohagaku no Sato, had been slogging through what felt like was a never-ending gauntlet of enemy shinobi. It was one enemy after another. Cut one down, 2 more show up. She felt like there was barely any progress being made. Her back bumps against another person's. Well, Sasuke-chan. At least we're almost there. How far do you think we're away from Kakashi-sensei? Asked an optimistic Sakura. She gripped her sword with both hands before parrying away a kunai strike and riposting straight into an Oto ninja's chest. His hands reached up to grip the blade, but she simply ran it through him deeper and pushed him off with a snap kick. There was a sense of disappointment in her chest at how terribly easy it was to dispatch her opponent. Her eyebrows furrowed momentarily as she watched him bleed out on the ground. Had she been making that much progress with Naruto that she hadn't noticed? Or were these people horribly trained and equipped for such an operation to invade Konoha? Or maybe Amiya Naruto was just that good at beating the literal hell out of her. Not sure, can't be too far by now. The fighting is starting to get less and less, so we must be thinning out the herd by now. She took note of her surroundings and the group that she was with. They were all the hopeful genin candidates participating in today's tournament. It was by Shikamaru's suggestion that they grouped together to get back to where their jonin teachers should be and receive official orders from them. Sakura had noted before that they were a motley crew consisting of all 5 great nations, and never before did she think that they would all be working together like this. And in a way Sasuke agreed with her. At one point in time their respective nations had gone to war with each other. The raven-haired girl shook her head. This was not the time for her mind to wander about such things. And speaking of wandering, her eyes trailed off towards where her once significant other was. He was standing over a corpse with blood on his hands. Tsubasa Daisuke had been awfully quiet. Not a word nor a peep from him. Except for an occasional indiscernible mutter here and there about something along with a constant scowl. Hey! You okay, Sasuke? Sakura breaks Sasuke out of her reverie. The pink-haired medic followed her line of sight. Hey, you're still not hung up over him, right? She says in a hushed tone. And no, just something feeling a bit off is all. Yeah, I feel you, like why in the world is Otogekure invading us? And how did they breach the walls so easily? Maybe Naruto knows? Or Kakashi-sensei? She reasoned that either of them would most likely know the motivations behind the attack. You two quit blabbering and hurry up. Shikamaru calls out. We're almost to the stadium proper. The two members of Team 7 mutter out an apology, and picks up the pace to catch up with the group. It wasn't long before they finally made it to where the general audience would be seated. To their surprise, a large portion of the civilian spectators had been evacuated with pockets here and there that were still in the process of being escorted out in groups. The squad was quickly spotted by their respective jonin leaders and were herded in for a detailed debriefing of the developing situation. Kakashi was at the head of the makeshift operations, directing things as the fighting was dying down inside the arena. Ah, good. You all made it safely, greets Kakashi in a cheery tone despite the given situation. I was about to send a group of Chunin to go find you all, but it seems like you kids are growing up faster than expected. Sasuke quickly noted that there was a certain blonde missing in the group. Sensei, where's Naruto? I don't see him with you. TCH, you would be asking about him, mutters Daisuke. She ignored it and looked expectantly at her jonin teacher. He said he went up to the roof to get a better look at things not too long ago, but I suppose it's been some time now. He contemplates something for a moment. You two, he points at Sakura and Sasuke, go up there and find out what the holdup is and... The sounds of wind howling throughout the arena greets everyone's ears. Hurricane-force winds whipped around causing everyone to duck. It was quickly followed by an explosion that made the whole stadium shudder and groan. The ceiling overhead cracked and gave into itself. Everybody! Move now! Kakashi shouts immediately. Everyone in the vicinity scattered as slabs of concrete and steel rebar rained down from above. Holy shit! What the fuck just happened? Various voices yelled out in surprise as they tried to figure out why the roof had collapsed over their heads. Coughing and blood being spat onto the ground could be heard from the center of the collapse. And Naruto! Her eyes widen at the sight of him. Who the hell is that on the ground? Sakura runs up next to Sasuke pointing at the black-haired person clothed in red. Why does he look like Naruto-kun? I don't know. Sasuke fumbles. She was just as confused as her teammate. The two were essentially identical twins with opposite color palettes. And then suddenly a long purple-haired woman comes out of nowhere and proceeded to engage Naruto. He barely fends her off before being savagely kicked in his ribs that sends him skidding on the ground. It was all a blur. Barely discernible to the human eye even with her Sharingan activated. Get down! Sakura tackles her to the ground as a cacophony of explosions follows suit. Sakura? Who are those two? The girl ducks her head back down, narrowly being decapitated by a stray boulder being flung from the blast of the arrows. I don't know. But he looks like he needs help. They both peeked their heads up over the cover and watched as he was beset on both sides. The two unknowns walked towards him slowly before their forms suddenly blurred and disappeared. It was like a whip cracking in the air. Any thoughts of charging in to provide assistance left their minds at the sheer ferocity and speed of the fight before them. It left them stunned at how they couldn't even track the barest of movements. The only way they could tell Naruto was surviving were by his grunts and the sound of steel screeching as they bashed against each other. GH-. A strained voice escapes Naruto's mouth. It all slows to a crawl momentarily as they see his left hand hold his now bleeding stomach. The movements were invisible to them. They didn't even see the attack that snaked through his defenses. He had been doing remarkably well against two opponents until now because he had left openings to guide his opponent's attacks to, using his inferiority as a weapon to block their furious onslaught. It limited the oncoming offensives to a point, but there was only so much he could mitigate. Uchiha Sasuke understood Amiya Naruto's methodology when it came to fighting. Prediction using information obtained. Planning using cultivated battle experience. Being one step ahead of the opponent to guide the fight into a favorable outcome. Her eyes squint away as bright flashes fill her vision. It was the sparks coming off his sword. It would shatter the two black swords that were constantly being projected and blocking two iron nails when he could. The two back off immediate, and she began the motions of jumping in before her arm was grabbed by Sakura. No! Not yet! We need to find a better opening. She points to where Kakashi was sneaking around. Look! He's already trying to find an opening to intervene properly. When he goes in, we go in as well. Sasuke huffs in frustration at the feeling of being useless, but agreed. This wasn't the time to charge in like a bull. She would bide her time for now before striking in with her sword. However, there was something unsettling in her stomach. As much as her heart wanted to believe that Amiya Naruto would overcome his opponents, her mind said otherwise. It was obvious who was going to win in the end. Kage dash! The red-armored swordsman was hit once more. Life-giving blood runs down his back and he lurches forward. And his opponents pounce like a pack of wolves. The purple-haired woman blasts off and re-engages from above. Naruto blocks the strike. Her feet pulverizes the floor when she lands, but she's already speeding off and comes back around for another strike. He parries it and attempts for a riposte. The woman continued her momentum as she blurs past him, and his strike misses wide. Sasuke could only tell by the aftershock of her feet smashing into the ground before rocketing off again. From there her Sharingan failed her in tracking the woman. At first it counted for more than a dozen strikes, and then another dozen, and then another dozen before she could no longer properly count them. It all happened so fast. Naruto's back was turned away from his doppelganger. They could see him rushing in for his rear flank. Sasuke's voice rises to warn him. G-H-H-R-K dash. And suddenly he's sent flying back from his starting position, rolling and tumbling on the ground. It was from Naruto bucking a kick like a mustang. He had caught the full force of it straight into his chest. She lets out a breath of relief. It's washed away when the sight of a heavily battered and bleeding Naruto comes into view. His armored chest was heaving, his face contorted in a mixture of pain and exhaustion. One of his eyes was barely open with blood running down freely over it. His right arm sported a fresh gash revealing a red cloth. He was using his sword as a support to keep himself up. He stubbornly refused to go down without a fight. Raikiri dash. Like a cobra striking from the shadows. Kakashi explodes and strikes forward with a hand coated in lightning from the cover of rubble. Sasuke! Now! Sakura was already blasting off towards the woman that had her back towards them. Without hesitation, she followed suit and sped past Sakura. Pushing lightning chakra into the sword, it comes to life with a series of crackling noises. With a mighty roar she swung her sword the moment a nail came striking down to deal a crippling blow to Naruto. Iron nail met steel blade. She grit her teeth as her knees bended from the monstrous strength behind the blow. Her target was only using one arm while she had two. The lightning chakra-infused blade had failed to cut into the dagger like nails, but it did its job of stopping the attack. I won't let you hurt him. The purple-haired assailant tilted her head slightly. What beautiful crimson eyes you have. A wicked grin set on her playful lips. Shall I show you mine? As Sasuke. Look away. Naruto croaks out from behind. The girl didn't need to as Sakura came roaring in. Don't you forget about me. Her head moves slightly towards the pink-haired girl in response. HRRK dash. Sasuke felt the woman's heel dig into her abdomen before she found herself flying backwards and into Naruto. They tumbled to the ground together harshly and were a mess of tangled limbs. When her world finally stopped spinning, she heard a groan of pain beneath her. Why you idiot dash? Need to pay attention more, he manages out. She rubbed the sore spot and where she was kicked before getting up and rolling her eyes. Only Naruto would lecture in the middle of a fight. Looking back, Sakura had missed. Kakashi deftly lands next to them, crouching down to inspect Naruto's wounded form. That look-alike is good, real good. He has a similar style to Naruto and uses projection magecraft. However, I managed to nick him in his stomach, he comments with a critical eye, still trained on the two unknowns. Sakura was already working her magic on healing Naruto by the humming sound of her Iryo techniques. A sigh resonates through the area. Avenger was clutching his now freshly bleeding stomach courtesy of Kakashi. Well, this isn't exactly how I panned it all out to be. Oh well, in for a penny, in for a pound, I suppose. It's time to say goodbye. Rider, would you so kindly leave them a departing gift? Naruto suddenly lurches up. Get down and close your eyes. Even in his wounded state, he pulled Kakashi to the ground with his left arm. Sakura with his right and kicked Sasuke's legs out, causing her to fall back onto his body. All the shinobi in the area who failed to react to the warning in time suddenly froze. There were no sudden flash of light. No calling of a technique. No flashy move. Unnerving silence quickly filled in the void like a flood. And when Uchiha Sasuke clambered back up, her jaw dropped. Her hands shook. The Sharingan that was still activated recorded every bit of detail. She wished it hadn't. The look of pure agonizing terror on the unfortunate souls who turned into stone was the stuff of nightmares. My body ached to the high heavens. The blood in my veins were like hot, sluggish, molten metal. I had barely closed my eyes the moment Alta Rider had pulled off her blindfold and used her mystic eyes of petrification to turn everyone in the vicinity into stone. Even with my eyes closed, I could still feel the effects of her petrifying gaze. The feeling of having your blood thicken like oatmeal was not a pleasant feeling to experience. Sasuke, if you're done using me as a chair, can you kindly get the hell off me now, please? No response. Hey, Earth to Sasuke. I follow her gaze and looked at the aftermath. I bite back a curse at seeing how many human-sized stone statues surrounded us. Everyone. Report in. Get me a body count on how many injured and how many dead. Kakashi began barking orders to reorganize whoever was left. Naruto? What the hell just happened? Who were those two that were attacking you? I grunted as Sakura started assessing the damage and went to work. The black-haired guy that looks like me is called Avenger. The purple-haired lady is Rider, well, Alta Rider, I guess. And simply put, she turned everyone who didn't look away in time into stone with her eyes. You can liken it to a dojutsu of sorts. A really, really rare dojutsu that's both a gift and a curse. And it seems as if they made their escape in the midst of all that chaos. Miriam came crawling out of my hair. So we have two heroic spirits running amok, one being the actual incarnate of evil, mind you, to go hide and watch whatever is about to happen. Judging by that scream over yonder of your walls, it's not going to be anything pleasant. Can we reverse whatever happened to them? He asks hesitantly. I shake my head. He scratches the back of his neck tiredly. We'll have to figure this out later then, for now we need to rally the regular forces and prepare a push for the main avenue soon. Command wants for us to secure the arena to use it as a staging ground since it provides a buffer between the administrative district and general districts. I hiss in discomfort as Sakura patched up a nasty gash on my back. Anything else? One of the main priorities is reaching the gate and closing it. We lost contact with personnel posted on the wall some time ago. Everything else went dark after that. His voice was low, bits of sadness and steeliness to it. We're assuming total loss for anyone at or near the wall, including civilians. It was a given that they were dead with how the Odo forces were simply slaughtering everyone in their sights, be it shinobi or innocent people who had nothing to do with Konoha. Maximum damage for maximum efficacy. There's also reports of shadowy entities lurking around assisting the enemy. Kakashi added. You have any clue what's all about? I sigh tiredly into the air. It was just one thing after another. It'll take too long to fully explain. Here, take this. I project around me a fair amount of black keys. One for everyone at least. Your ninjutsu should be able to deal significant damage alone, but these swords will put them down for good. They're made mainly for throwing or thrusting, keep that in mind. I watch him as tested the grip and wait before nodding to himself. Everyone, come pick one up. You'll be using these as a secondary measure against the reported unknown entities rampaging out there. They all shuffled along all around me as they picked up the oddly designed swords. Somewhere behind me I feel a distinctive sneer being made. I had a feeling who it was, but refrained from making a comment. I really didn't want to hear his voice. The more he stayed silent around me, the better. And Naruto. What this? Sakura's voice was quivering. I felt her hand touch my right arm and figured she discovered the shroud underneath. When I go to look, the sight alone made me pause for a second before I sighed once more. It was a blade growing out of my shoulder. The tip of the steel was sticking out between the wrappings of the shroud. A part of it was exposed, but there was no damage to the cloth itself. This body is made out of swords. How terribly true that it was. Avalon and Unlimited Blade Works conflicted with each other. Throwing in the QB into the mix of things made it all worse. Ah, yeah? I start lamely. I suppose it was only a matter of time before you all found out. I ripped the rest of the covering off my right arm to fully expose the shroud to everyone. I also removed the gloves and clenched my right hand repeatedly. My gaze lingers on the two different skin tones for a while. So this is it, huh? Kakashi spoke up. I look around to see Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke all staring intently at my right arm like it was a strange anomaly. There were others who stuck around like Anko, Kurenai, Asuma, and Guy that were taking in the sight as well. I roll my shoulder as a test and immediately regret it as a blood-curdling screech of steel on steel grinds against each other. Naruto. Sakura grabs my hand. Why didn't you say anything? The pink-haired kunoichi looked as if she was about to cry. Damn it, I hate it when people cried over me. Especially girls. That made it even worse. Hey, I grab her attention by reaching out for her hand. Don't worry about me. I've just started coming to terms with it myself, alright? So no crying over me, you hear, Sakura? We have a job to do, and you probably have the most important one of them all. There's going to be a lot of people that'll be hurt after this whole thing is done, and we'll be needing you to fix them all up. After all this, please, tell us? Come clean for the people who care about you. She pleads. I will. I promise. I move to get up and feel every part of me protest against it. My body was aching and burning. Everything hurt, but there were people that needed saving. People who couldn't protect themselves. Men, women, children that were out there currently suffering in this hell that they suddenly found themselves in. That inhuman roar resounds throughout the air once again. It was now louder than ever before. The concrete beneath my feet rumble at the intensity of it. Change of plans, I said. Kakashi, I'll be going to the Hokage monument to get a better look of what's going on. I can provide long-range fire support from up there while I'm at it. What? How are you going to be able to provide support from all the up there? Said an incredulous Kurenai. Let alone seeing what's going on down here from that far. Yeah, the distance from there to the main avenue is several kilometers out. Asuma followed up. Even if you're a good shot, and you added chakra to augment your strength, your shots won't even reach us. Oh, don't worry, they'll reach alright, and when they do, be sure to duck, cautioned the left arm. It would be in poor taste if someone had to scrape what's left of you off the streets into a soup can. With those parting words, I reinforced my legs and sped off to the Hokage mountain with Miram. There was a shit-eating grin on his face as we left, and I couldn't help but roll my eyes at his crassness. The view from up the cliff face would have been breathtaking if it weren't for the fact that Konohagakure no Sato was up in flames with the sound of people dying in the streets below. I was standing on top of one of the Hokage's heads. The fourth one, to be precise. The irony of it all was not lost upon me. Do you see it, Amiya-kun? The monster beyond the wall making all that incessant racket? Miram was perched atop of my head. My eyes squint to gain a better focus through all the columns of smoke rising hundreds of meters into the air. It was only a faint outline of it. A humanoid-looking creature that was at least several hundreds of meters tall. From what I could make out, it was grotesque in the sense that it was vaguely familiar yet completely alien to my senses. There was a sharp, distinctive red glow being emanated from its head and the center of the chest. Its two arms were high above its head, reaching out for something in the air. It looked like it was attempting to gather energy, or something to that effect. Do you remember my description of the Lesser Grail attempting to manifest itself near the closing hours of the Fifth Holy Grail War? So it's that, huh? He clicks his tongue. How boorish, he says primly. It's most likely the cause of all the shadow entities spawning and other things. No wonder they gained control of the wall so quickly. Those poor souls were overwhelmed and consumed. What a waste of human life. No kidding, it explains why it sounded so familiar. I stared intently, peering through all the smoke and fire. And reminds me why I should get rid of it as soon as possible. Trace on. I project the bow and Calibald 2 in my left and right hand respectively. In my head, I've already measured the distance between the mountain and the Lesser Grail. 6.5 kilometers from here to there. It was far beyond my normal range to accurately hit it properly, but I didn't need accuracy with this noble phantasm. I didn't need to shoot it perfectly in between its eyes or anything like that. The blast radius from breaking the traced weapon should be enough to blast it away. Raising my arms, I pull back the string of the bow. The sound of the esoteric metallic material of the bow from the not-so-distant future creaks and groans. My aim was fuzzy from here on out. I was imitating the strength and power of a fake heroic spirit. A faker through and through. I push as much magical energy I could dredge up into the noble phantasm to break it. A burst of pure prana comes out of the tip of the arrow. Arcs of energy danced all around me as I concentrated my aim to the best of my abilities. The earth reverberates and shakes. My feet and form hold steady. My eyes narrow in concern. Was it responding to me? Was it cognizant to recognize me as a threat to its being? Amiyakuen, its magical energy levels just spiked crazily out there, Miram mutters worryingly. It made me worry too. I increase even more prana into the arrow to the point where it was thrumming to life. Cracks spider throughout the noble phantasm. Any more at this point, and it would reach catastrophic meltdown and explode in my face. There was enough energy packed in to crater the face of the monument. My core is twisted in madness. My grip tightens. I breathe in to steady my aim. Whatever it would attempt to do, Calibald would twist it away with its abilities. Calibald. It was like letting go a bolt of lightning. Chunks of stone weighing in several tons were torn off from the ground along with whole trees being uprooted as well. The broken phantasm shrieked, warping away the billowing columns of smoke in its path. But that wasn't the only thing flying in the air as a red lance of pure magical energy flew past it, unaffected by the twisting distortion. My jaw drops at the sight of it. It soars over my head, missing me by a significant margin. I keep track of it on its flight path. The prana lance from the Lesser Grail smashes into a mountain over yonder. A blinding flash fills my vision, forcing me to cover my face with a free hand. The ground beneath me quakes and rumbles like never before. When the light dies down, and I'm able to look back, astonishment and shock fills me. Miram is doing the same as well. The lance raised the mountain to the ground in an instant. I turned my gaze towards where my arrow landed. My breath hitched. I had barely even scratched it. The forest surrounding it was completely blasted away and cratered. But compared to what it sent back at me, it was like comparing a hand grenade to nuclear bomb. I gulped nervously. My throat was dry like a desert. Amiyakuen, Miram starts off slowly. I think you're going to need a bigger sword. Yeah. My jaw was still unhinged at the display of power. We're going to need to get to that gate and fast. Then you better start shooting arrows like never before if you want to get to there in time, Amiyakuen. Humph, I'll do you better. Oh? I pull back on the bow and ready the first arrow. Yeah, I'll make it rain. Out of the frying pan and into the fire. That was what Uchiha Sasuke could aptly describe the situation she was in currently. She, along with everyone else, had been the first wave to lead the charge into the main avenue to get to the gate. The fighting was intense as both defenders and invaders struggled for every meter on the street. The defenders were a hodgepodge of shinobi hailing from the Great Five Nations, with the invaders consisting primarily of Odo shinobi with other smaller elements supporting them. Building by building, room by room, they cleared everything out before proceeding further, with each one becoming harder than the next. Buildings that were set ablaze were considered a total lost cause, and damage control to prevent it from spreading went into full effect. The body count was sky high in terms of enemy deaths and civilian casualties. No one was spared. Women and children in particular were hunted down with a great prejudice by the invading forces. This was war. This was actual war. It was all incredibly sobering for her. Not even a year ago she had once shared the same sentiments as Daisuke's friends that a war would be amazing to participate in to become famous like Konoha's past heroes. To become the next Kuroi Senko, or the next Shiroi Kiba, or even the next Sannin. Back then she wanted to fight to prove herself and become great in honor of her family's name. Now she realized why Amiya Naruto fought. It was to prevent this. To prevent the horrors and atrocities that fellow human beings can commit. To save people. Now she understood. The whistling of shuriken cutting through the air broke her out of her reverie. With practiced ease she blocked all 6 and threw the black key at her assailant. The Otogekyu ninja failed to block the sword with his flimsy kunai. The kunai shattered in his hands and could only stare on as the blade pierced itself into his chest all the way to the cross guard. He stumbled back and attempted to pull the sword out, but it was for naught as another sword came swishing through the air and cut cleanly into his neck, sending his head flying across the street. Blood spurted out of the neck like a broken water fountain before finally collapsing to the side. She plucked the sword out of the body and sighed. That makes it 27 so far. Her voice was soft as she spoke to herself and glanced at the body-littered streets of the main avenue. And so much more to go. Sasuke! Behind you! The hairs on the back of her neck stood up on its ends. The pervasive stench of evil radiated through the air from behind. Without acknowledging the warning, her right foot slides to the right to dodge the downward strike. In her left hand she spun the blade into a reverse grip and thrusted back with Naruto's projected sword into its stomach, causing it to disintegrate. Huh, well you look at that. You got me all worried for nothing, Sasuke, teased Sakura. Sasuke replied with a smile and apologized for letting her mind wander. Her teammate sighs and runs a gloved hand through her pink hair. The fighting's getting thicker and thicker the closer we get to the wall. I feel like we've barely made any progress. Not to mention we've barely found any civilians along the way, just bodies and more bodies as we go. Where does it end? The question echoed in her mind. Indeed, where does it end? It wasn't long before the fighting picked up again. The lull of peace was short and fleeting. Another wave of bodies collide against each other in the proverbial meat grinder. Damn it! Cursed someone to her left. Where the hell is that guy that said he was going to provide long-range fire support? Yeah. Fire support my ass. I bet he just ran away. What a coward! He's all talk and no show. Sasuke ducked beneath a food cart to avoid a set of shuriken, and kunai being flung down en masse by the enemy. She turned and scowled at the other shinobi who were bad-mouthing Naruto. Then she noticed who exactly she was taking cover with behind the cart. It was Daisuke's group of Jonin friends. She blanched, rolled her eyes, and made to move to a different cover immediately after the volley was finished. In fact, she'd rather charge headstrong than be near them. Just as the barrage of projectiles ended, a dreadful roar shocks the air, followed up by 2 monumental surges of energy through the air, with one being significantly larger than the other. The fighting stopped. Everyone looked around for the source of it. Look! Someone says. At the Hokage monument. There's a red glow atop of the Yandame's head. Her Sharingan eyes didn't need to tell her the obvious, that it was Amiya Naruto preparing something. That must have been the reason why he was taking so long. He had assessed that there was a greater threat beyond the walls that needed to be taken care of first before providing support. The red glow was alluring to her. She couldn't peel her eyes off of it. The object in his hands reached critical mass, and it was soon let loose. From where she was, kilometers away, she could see the plume form from the back blast. The arrow was akin to a shooting star in the night. Sasuke's eyes could barely keep up. It distorted and warped everything in the air in a twisting motion. But it wasn't the only projectile in the sky, as a lance of some sort zoomed past it, undeterred by the twisting distortion. In an instant, the earth quaked and everyone on the ground lost their footing from all the shaking. Over the distance, she could see 2 mushroom clouds forming, with one being ludicrously larger than the other that it was shameful to compare them. What the hell are you shooting at, Naruto? Asked a concerned Sakura. She must have huddled up next to her when everything started to rumble. She notices that Kakashi crouched down next to them. More importantly, what in the world shot back at him? His Sharingan eye narrowed in concentration before it widened in surprise and huffed an amused breath. You 3. Her teacher called out to the 3 Jonin beside her. I heard you all griping about my friend. I suggest you sit back and watch very carefully, Kakashi said in his normal fashion that seemed to never fail to get underneath people's skin. Huh! Was their collective response. The words of Miriam Solomon fluttered back into her head. Be sure to duck. A red arrow flies closely overhead. She could feel the wind splash against her face from how fast it was moving. Her head turns towards the street leading to the main square of the village. It strikes perfectly, right between the eyes of a poor unfortunate soul to be the first target. It sends him flying back dozens meters before the arrow explodes, leaving behind a gory mess of brain matter and cranium. She ducked, and so did everyone else as they all watched the fireworks unravel. The arrows crashing down from the sky are a literal heavy torrential rain. They smash into the ground, completely devastating the enemy forces, the shadow monsters, and everything else in their path. It was just one after another of non-stop arrows being flung by Naruto. Sasuke had to rub her eyes in disbelief at the way the arrows behaved. Usually when objects are shot or thrown they followed an arc from beginning to end. But these arrows were turning in midair to correct themselves and home in on their targets. Those who tried dodging by jumping up or to the sides would balk and cry out as some of the arrows jerked and slammed into them dead center. Some even tried cowering behind walls, but the angry crimson projectiles pierced through them easily like paper. Others tried futilely to block and deflect the arrows, but proved to be a fool's gambit as they were overwhelmed in a heartbeat. The shadow entities in particular were hunted down with an extreme amount of prejudice by the fact that every single time an arrow careened into them, they were either launched off 30 meters into the air and exploded, or were turned into a pincushion and then exploded. Suffice to say the opposition was being annihilated before her very eyes. He made it look all so easy. A cheeky, shit-eating voice rings out. It was Kakashi. Speak of the devil and he shall appear, with a whole lot of arrows. He whistles in marvel of Naruto's work. When the smoke cleared and the last of the arrows met their mark, a clear path had been defined for them straight to the gate, albeit ridden with craters and body parts strewn about everywhere. And landing in front of everyone in the main square was the man himself with his bow in hand and an arrow knocked. A smile edges its way onto her face, and it spoke of the emotions toiling within her. Of her friendship with him. Of her fondness for him. Her eyes trailed down to the lower half of his red overcoat ensemble as it fluttered in the wind. It was mesmerizing. It was captivating. It was enchanting. It was powerful. Her heart skipped a beat. It was at that moment, Uchiha Sasuke knew, she had fallen in love with the person before her. I'd taken everything before me. The absolute carnage and devastation that I wrought on the enemy forces entrenched in the main avenue and square. They didn't even stand a chance. Most of the street was destroyed along with the buildings that lined it. Amiyakun, Miriam's voice rings out in the quiet main square of Konoha. The magical energy is beginning to rising again. There's no time for you to linger here and let your mind wander, lest you want this place to become a smoldering crater in the next 5 minutes. My face sets into a frown as I waded through the wasteland. My head goes through a list of noble phantasms that had enough power to dismantle the lesser grail, or maybe even block the lance if it came to it. And I'm suddenly met with the realization that the list of noble phantasms that embodies the characteristics of Anti-Fortress were incredibly small. Not to mention they were all usually classified as high-class divine construct noble phantasms. eppelMax, green field cutting through the 1,000 mountains would be perfect for this situation to obliterate the lesser grail, but the amount of magical energy needed to project it was too high of a cost in my current state. The degradation of the traced construct would be so severe that it would be almost next to useless. Another name floats to the forefront. Sulsagana, heavenly formation of the astral stars, was another construct that could do the job, but I'm confronted with the same problems as eppelMax. No. I was thinking too big. I needed something that could amplify a small amount of magical energy into offensive power. Something that could. I stop. My grip tightens on the handle of the bow that it began to groan in protest. I knew what weapon that could perform the job beyond expectations. It destroyed it once. It destroyed it twice. And it would most certainly be destroyed thrice. The only problem was, could I bring myself to let it go? It was a one-time deal. I was neither the rightful owner nor wielder. Just someone who had the ability to wield the sword because of a special one in a million circumstance. A fluke. A fake. As soon as I used it, the world would reclaim its prized possession back from a foolish mortal who greedily kept it hidden to himself. I'm being selfish. I'm being stupid. I'm being greedy. I'm a terrible person. Here I am trying to rationalize whether I should save hundreds of thousands of lives or keep a sword with me to remind me of her. Saber would probably be disappointed and kill me. Tosaka would absolutely murder me while berating me for being stupid as usual. Hey, you idiot! Are you daft? We're here and you're just standing around like a dumb schmuck. Did you figure out a way to get rid of our little cup problem or no? I huffed tiredly. Yeah, somewhat. It's a work in progress right now. We'll work with what we have then. Leave the gate to your shinobi friends and get up that damn wall. With you daydreaming, we wasted precious minutes. There's maybe only a minute before this place is blown up to kingdom come. Shit. I'm running out of time. I reinforced my legs and bounded up to the roof of the battered gate. The lesser grail amalgamation comes into view. It's only about a kilometer out from where I was. Its hands raised up above its head, collecting the magical energy into the form of a lance. The foreboding red color glowed ominously between its hands. High above the sky there was a portal. A hole, I correct myself. What an unsightly ugly thing it is, wouldn't you agree, Amiyakuen? The rat comments distastefully. I hummed in agreement. What in the actual hell is that thing, Naruto? I look to my right, and I see all the jonins and their genin students bounded up to the wall. I paused and gave it a good look. Something that I've been running away from now for the better part of the year now. I feel their questioning gazes at my response. Something that needs to be put to rest once and for all. I dispel the bow. My left hand goes to grab my right shoulder. It was aching. It was burning. Like hot iron rods being shoved down the length of the arm. It howls into the air. The roar alone from so close forces everyone besides me and Miram to their knees. It had finished gathering up a necessary amount of energy, and began forming a lance above its head to throw at Konoha. At me. My right hand clenches. I took too long to decide whether to use her sword or not. No matter what, I had to block this attack and then I can attack. There was only one shield that could possibly block a lance of this magnitude, and I'm not sure if I'll be getting back up from this. The right arm begins to tremble now. The power of the phantasmal beast, Kyubi no Yoko, was in my right arm. It was the calling of my true nature as a jailer since my inception. Before I dreamt of being a magus. Of being a hero. What are we going to do? How are we going to stop that thing, Naruto? Sasuke stepped forward looking to help. I shake my head. I'm sorry to say that you won't be much help here. You're going to have to sit this one out. She steps forward to say something, but I jab a finger to her forehead before she could say anything. You're a moron, you know that? You should know when to fight, when to run, and when to let others do the fighting for you. Her hand rubs the spot. But you're always doing the fighting for us. You're always the one bearing the burdens. Why you? You selfish fucking bastard. Let us help you. Let me help you. Just for once let us help you fight. I'm stunned. Her voice chokes. I want to prove to you that I can stand up there with you. That I can fight the same fights as you. That I can be there to help support you. Please. Please, Naruto-kun. Silence. The sound of magical energy being gathered and wind whipping around us are the only sounds to be heard. Uchiha Sasuke finally grew a spine and bit back. A smile. A true smile is on my face. Sasuke. I walk up to her and grab her shoulders. You've certainly changed and grown up as a person from the time when I first met you. She sniffles. There were tears threatening to escape from the corners of her eyes. I dash. Her voice stammers, but I interrupt her. I'm sorry. And like that I roughly shove her into the arms of Sakura and Kakashi. Miram. He already understands what to do. Ahem, would you also kindly go away? The left arm of Crown subjugates his will onto the group, forcing their bodies to lock up and stand stock still. What are you doing? And Naruto? Sasuke struggles and so does everyone else. Naruto! Her voice screams. Her body protesting the action of walking away. Naruto! She curses to the high heavens, yelling and screaming all the way for Miram to stop. I can see the others, particularly Kakashi and Sakura, struggle against the foreign presence within them. How awful of Miram to leave them still cognitive of what's going on. The will of a dead apostle ancestor was far greater than theirs. And Naruto. To my bewilderment, Sasuke actually managed to turn her head around, piercing crimson Sharingan eyes gazing into my own blue eyes. They were blazing furiously in pure unadulterated anger, spinning all the while. And then they suddenly began to mutate. What was once a 2-tomo Sharingan mutated into a fully matured 3-tomo Sharingan. The pure agony on her face forced me to look away, but it didn't drown her voice out. It wasn't until they were off the wall that her voice finally faded away into the background. "That's cruel, you know that?" says the man who shoves a woman away who was about to confess to you. My face grimaces at his rebuttal. Sorry to say, but I'm already taken by Tosaka and she's probably going to gander my face off the moment we meet. Crown mutters something, but it's overridden by the roar of the lesser grail. I even out my breathing. I hook a finger underneath a neatly tied knot near the top of my shoulder and raise my arm. I hesitate just for a moment, but throw all caution to the wind. It was do or die now, no going back. The knot is undone easily, and the holy shroud of Martin unfurls all in one go, leaving but a part of the wrapping on the hand to keep it from flying off into the wind. The sight of the arm being completely tanned with the magical circuits glowing brightly is grotesque to me. It was my arm and yet not my arm. The combination of the Kyuubi and Avalon trying to regrow my arm and creating an unholy matrimony of chakra and thaumaturgy. It hums to life at being released, and an overwhelming rush of pure magical energy courses through my circuits. Power 1,000 times more than what my circuits can handle threatens to escape, and I crush it with a will of steel. I grit my teeth and keep my eyes trained on the lance. This was power that no normal human being could wield without killing themselves from the sheer energy output. Be it chakra or prana. Jinchuriki throughout the ages and the corners of this continent all tend to die an early death. Only an exceptional few ever control the powers within themselves and live to a decent age. The lesser grail monster rears its right arm back. It was ready to throw. I step forward with my right foot. I now know the scope of my power with my right arm. A nigh unlimited source of energy at the cost of one's life from burnout. It replenishes my empty reserves, but I'll die within the next 10 or so minutes from exposure. The power of a being that rivals the gods. An extraordinary weight. A Miya Naruto cannot handle the sheer magnitude of it. But all I knew was that I could use it for a brief moment. Dash! My eye twitches. It breaks. A small part of my brain explodes along with the circuit. I cough out a glob of blood. This body wasn't made to withstand the overflowing magical energy. I reinforced my body. It was breaking down. All I needed was a few precious moments to keep myself together. Do your worst, and remain you. Its arm trembles momentarily and adjusts its aim. Its hostility now has a focus. Instead of aiming for the heart of the village, it aims for me. It recognizes me as the threat from before. Good. It releases another roar into the air before throwing the lance with all its might. Space distorts. The air around it is forcibly pushed away by a mighty gust. The bullet approaches faster than ever. I'm undeterred. I close one of my eyes and keep the other open. I am the bone of my sword. The line helps me concentrate as I pull forth a conceptual weapon that I knew that had the best chance of blocking the thrown lance. Ro Aia's dash. The lance smashes into the shield like a freight train. That lance that raised a mountain to the ground has been stopped. The radiating storm of heat and plasma dances all around me. Ro Aia's. The 7 rings that cover the fiery heavens appears from empty space and shields myself from the demonic lance. 7 flower petals made from light to represent 7 layers. Each layer with the defensive power of a reinforced fortress wall. The shield was a boundary field noble phantasm that was said to be invincible against all projectile-based weaponry. A thrown lance should be defeated by this shield without even penetrating one of the petals due to its concept of being a shield of no loss. Even so, it smashes through the first 3 layers of the shield like it was nothing. 3 petals are removed. Only 4 are left. The force alone pushes me back almost to the edge of the wall. Any damage done to the shield is reflected back onto the user. Every layer that shattered like glass shattered my body. GHHCCKK-. The fourth and fifth layer of the shield shatters. More damage is done to my body. Only 2 petals remain. In the face of such power, it felt like it was unstoppable. But I had to block it no matter what. I pushed with all the magical energy I had in me into the shield to break the last 2 layers. For the barest of moments I could feel the lance being rejected by the bounded fields. My hopes rise. But it's immediately dashed away as the second to last layer breaks. Gerdash. This was the last petal. The last layer of defense. I give it my all even if it kills me in the end. NRRRGGHHHH. With a roar spirit, I push back with all my might. With all my will. A bright flash. An explosion engulfs my view. Crown was fretting out of his mind and pulling his hair out in frustration. Amiya! Now's not the time to be playing Sleeping Beauty. He had foregone his usual appearance of a small rat and took his elderly human priest form. He was crouched down next to the horrifically mangled and broken body of Amiya Naruto, doing his best to patch him up with magecraft. All the while roaring and commanding for the boy to wake up from his slumber. Wake up, you god-be-damned moron! Or this whole village will be nothing but a crater tomorrow. The boy begins to stir. Every part of his body begins to twitch in little movements. First his legs, then his arms, before finally his right eye creaks open. He gurgles something out. Yes. I know it hurts. Don't be such a baby and get up. He groans out in excruciating pain. And my arm. Naruto whines pitifully. It didn't look much like an arm any longer. The appendage was horribly mangled and torn up. The flesh and muscle ripped apart to expose the bone that laid underneath, and even that was broken as well. When Crown looked at it closely, he could see swords knitting themselves together to keep the arm attached to his body. It was one less thing for him to focus on. What little he knew of thaumaturgy healing was going to the legs and torso of Amiya Naruto. It was a small requirement of all executor-level priests, especially burial agents, to know of spiritual healing. Don't worry about it. It'll heal back up. You just need to get up. He was repeating himself over and over for the boy to get up. Every passing second counted as the lesser grail gathered up enough energy to form its lance again. It was drawing energy from the main magical ley line to fuel its attack, and the next one was coming up quick. High dash! Amiya Naruto slowly lurches forward. That's it! Come on! You can do it! He encouraged him with every movement. He groaned in agony, but continued to get up. When he was finally on his knees crouching, Miram slung Naruto's left arm over his shoulders. All right, Amiya-kun. I'm going to help you stand up, all right? You hear me? Naruto's responded by spitting out a glob of blood to the floor. I'll take that as a yes then, he mutters. Okay, 3, 2, 1. He heaved him up on his 2 feet. This fucking sucks, Miram. It was a rarity for him to hear the boy curse, let alone out loud. Watch your mouth. You're in the presence of a man in cloth, he jokes with the boy. You're defiling my priestly ears. I'm one to you, jackass. He rolled his eyes. Of course, how could I forget the venerable executor Amiya? He shifted the weight to where Naruto was no longer leaning on him for support. All right. I'm going to let go of you now. I healed you up enough, now finish what you've started. Gotcha. Crown counted down from 3 before letting him go. He watched the battered mage stumble a bit before he balanced himself. The Red Knight before him places a hand on his chest before pulling out an invisible sword. He couldn't help but stare in envy at the greatest treasure of mankind. Of all the treasures in the world, none was greater than this. People all over the world could only dream of seeing such a thing, let alone wielding it. With both hands he planted the sword in front of him to use it as a support. Blood was running freely down the length of the blade, exposing the outline of it. The wielder heaved a great breath before slowly wrapping his hands around the handle of the blade and raising it up above his head. Naruto! Miram turned around and saw that the group he enthralled had returned. He uttered a small curse to himself about his carelessness. In his focus to heal Amiya Naruto back up to an acceptable degree, his control over Naruto's acquaintances slipped, allowing them to return. The girl who looked like she was about to confess her feelings to him was at the forefront of the group. Her mystic eyes ablaze in anger at him as she skidded to a stop, huffing and puffing. He cocked an eyebrow up. Apologies, but Amiyakun is a bit busy right now. He glances back. I think you'll want to watch what happens next. I am through with just watching, the girl growls. You either step aside, or... She's interrupted as a wave of hurricane-force winds slam into her and everyone else. It forces everyone to cover their eyes and look away. The moment her eyes connects with the golden brilliance radiating from the sword, she was enraptured by the light being emitted. Oh my God, it's so beautiful? The hallowed voice of Miriam Solomon rings out through the still air. While one could say there are many other swords crafted more splendidly, and with better skill, this sword is an illusion far, far superior to them. You calling it beautiful would dirty its appearance. It is instead something sacred, forged from people's conceptions, legends weaved only out of hope. It was a Herculean feat just for me to keep the sword up. It took every ounce of effort and will for me to not drop the sword while I scraped the bottom of the barrel for any magical energy left within me. Her sword only needed a fair amount to set off a chain reaction. And I'm not sure if I could even provide the bare minimum. The vision in my right eye was starting to go gray and darkness began to creep in. This body wouldn't last another minute or two. I've relied too much on this body of mine without even knowing it. People die when they're killed, but I've stubbornly refused to do so. It is a crystal trained by the alone of mankind, making it reign as the strongest fantasy. The crystallization of the prayer glory and all the things etched in the hearts of those who are scattered at the sword's exuberance, the nostalgic, the sorrowful, and hallowed dreams of those who found themselves on the bloody hell called a battlefield. It burned my lungs every time I took a breath. Each inhale like a hot forge being pumped with air. Every exhale a cold and sharp poke from the steel. The only reason why I'm able to grip the sword with a tight enough grip was due to unlimited blade works locking in my hands with the swords growing out of it. It knitted and weaved itself through flesh and bone to keep it in place. The feeling was like 1,000 needles prickling through your hands. Humph, I see you're still alive. You're a stubborn little human being, aren't you? I had completely forgotten about the Kyuubi. Now that the shroud was gone, he was now able to fully communicate to me again. His voice was deep and baritone. It rumbled my head every time he spoke. I can respect that. I've never met a human who has stubbornly refused to die even when he should by all accounts. You're being awfully talkative. Come to see a dead man drop into his grave, The phantasmal beast scoffs. Do not presume me to be a depraved, mindless beast. I was given thought to which I may use to reason by my Creator. He didn't answer my question. So why are you here? Come to gloat then with your supposed superior intelligence. Your infinite wisdom you've garnered since your conception in time immemorial? No. With the shroud removed, I finally have the ability to see and feel the outside world through your senses. The touch of the wind on your skin, the smell of the forest leaves, the sound of dirt crunching underneath your feet, the taste of blood in your mouth, and the sight of that sword. I see, even the Kyuubi would be attracted by the all-encompassing power of Saber's sword. The sword represents a desire of all warriors, past, present, and future whom have been fully exposed to the nightmares of the battlefield. And that desire? To be exalted. I can feel the world calling for its greatest treasure to be returned to her. She wants it now, but she's waiting patiently. Even with all the sins he has committed by selfishly hiding away the greatest fantasy, she's allowing it to be used one last time. Ha, you should consider yourself lucky, my jailer. I didn't know what to say. You've used up the last vestiges of prana. Your circuits are fried. Avalon won't be able to help you without her here to fully activate it. You won't be able to even call forth its name to activate it. My jaw tightens and I continue to dig deeper. I was coming up short everywhere. There was nothing left in this body. But I can help. You and I have never seen eye to eye. It's evident by how well you've entrapped me in your reality marble after that whole debacle in Fuyuki City. And even then I have room to roam as I please in this wasteland. It's more than what I can say about my last two jailers. A deal with the devil, huh? The Kyuubi was right. While the sword was glowing brightly and brought out the residual prana in the background, it wasn't going to do anything except act like a glorified glow stick. I'll bite. What is it do you want then? To see its light. That's all? Are you serious? I'll have my freedom one way or another. It may come now or it may come later. Time is inconsequential for me. Besides knowing you, I won't have to wait for long. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I wanted to do both. Instead, I hacked up blood and allowed it to dribble down my mouth. Do it then. I'll sign my soul away to a devil. It wouldn't be the first time that Emiya Naruto had signed his soul away to save people. It certainly wouldn't be the last. It's nothing like that. I assure you, boy, this is all entertainment for me to pass the time. I am no Yashiki, for she is far, far worse than you could ever imagine. With those departing words along with a menacing chuckle, the QB faded into the background of my mind. Do you see it? Do you see what he holds in his hands? The light that shines within us all. I close my eye and a resurgence of power flows within me. The phantasmal fox was directing his energy to Avalon to be converted into magical energy for me to use. The sword began rattling in my hands at the overwhelming power it was holding back. Its name transcends all boundaries. Time and space. Cultures and languages. Nations and borders. For its name is Dash. I inhale sharply, ignoring all pain and senses. X-Dash. The lesser grail vessel roars in defiance at its impending doom. It scrambles around with its arms trying to do anything to escape, but found no mobility. It was trapped by its own design. Excalibur, the sword of promised victory, swoops down in one clean motion, unleashing a blade of light that slices everything it touches. It was a blast of pure, refined golden energy that cuts through the earth, the trees, and the mountain of meat. It plows through the lesser grail with ease, cutting it in half and breaking it down. Absolutely obliterating every piece of it from the base to the top, it flattens the forest. The golden wave then travels up to the portal above in a spiraling motion before coalescing into a point. It flashes once before bursting like a supernova in the shape of a massive cross. Golden light scatters all across the land like a gentle snowfall. The rooftop of the gate is silent. The wind is gone. The roar of the monster beyond the wall is silenced permanently. So beautiful, a timid voice notes the spectacle. I can barely see straight out of my right eye. I'm envious of those around me who can see Saber's brilliance. The weight in my hands begins to dissipate bit by bit. The holy sword begins to fade away. There's some small measure of magical energy left. I begin to wobble on my feet. I can feel myself starting to fall forwards to the ground. There's a tight feeling welting up in my chest. What was this feeling? It was the feeling of regret and sorrow. That's what it was. The same day that I declared that I would go back home and right the wrongs. I'm left dying far away from home. Far away from Tosaka. I can just imagine the worry on her face with my eyes closed. This is what I get for running away like a coward. A suitable punishment for one such as myself. A single tear rolls down the right side of my face. I didn't want to die. Emiya Naruto did not want to die, for he had so much to make up for. My body begins to lean forward. I try and stop myself, but there's no fuel left in this body. I stop resisting, letting gravity take control. The air rushes past my face as I begin to black out. But just before I fall flat on my face, someone catches me. My limp body falls into their embrace. My eyes didn't catch who they were. All it saw were red and black. It felt familiar. My mind tells me that I've felt this before. However, with everything shutting down, I couldn't put the name to this person. I swear, I know this person. Her melodic voice rings out to my ears. Emiya-kun, you idiot. I smile a bloody smile. There's only one person in the world that can chastise me like that. Tosaka. He smiles as he's dying in her arms. His voice gurgles something out that sounds a lot like her name. She shakes her head in exasperation. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Her hand digs into a pocket and pulls out a ruby pendant. Good grief, to think I would have to use this twice in one lifetime, nay? Emiya-kun. The ruby shines brightly before it dulls blankly. There we go. That should keep you going until I can fix you up properly. Excuse me? Tosaka Rin looks up and finds an audience watching her. There were two that stood out to her. One with black hair and one with pink hair? Her turquoise eyes blinks. A delicate eyebrow goes up acknowledging their presence. Who are you? The one with black hair says aggressively. Rin gently lays Naruto's body down gently. She brushes off her clothes and flourishes her hair. I apologize for not introducing myself. My name is Tosaka Rin and I'm this moron's girlfriend. A man with silver hair who wore a mask coughs repeatedly to the side awkwardly. What? Chapter 15. The Magus named Tosaka Rin. Amiya-kun, if I didn't love you so much and weren't recovering from being on the brink of death, I would smash your stupid head in, you idiot. A delicate hand reached out to caress his face as he slumbered onto the path towards recovery. Honestly, she sighs to herself, I don't know what ticks me off more. The fact that you and Archer both managed to avoid my wrath, or that you somehow got yourself in a situation far worse than I could ever imagine. Her thumb softly rubs over the part of his cheeks where his whisker-like birthmarks should have been. She couldn't help but note the severity of the rebound effects from the overusage of projection magecraft. A fourth of his body was now completely tanned darkly like Archer's, with parts of his hair fully white. It was a stark contrast to where he still retained his fair complexion and blonde hair. Naruto's head automatically responded to Rin's ministration. In his unconscious state he was enjoying the feel of her hand. It caused her to smile softly at his reaction. You like that, don't you? My silly stupid hero. She was enjoying the skin-on-skin contact with her hand and his cheek. The memories of being with him and Saber in the apartment building in London making their own little pact all came rushing back at that moment. It was barely into their first year of thaumaturgical education in the clock tower that Naruto had decided to part ways with the organization in order to travel the world after finding his answer. It was from there that both she and Saber would follow along as well in his journeys to see the world and all its splendor it had to offer to them. Regardless, having fun, suffering, seeing the sights, and eventually having our own happily ever after. That's the future in store for us. All three of them gathered around together, holding each other tenderly. Herself, Saber, and Naruto. They were like pieces of a puzzle that was finally completed. Naruto represented the heart of the group, Saber as the soul and spirit, and finally herself as the brains. All of them were missing something that the other filled in. A small tear ebbs its way out of her eye to run down the right side of Rin's face. She wipes it off with her left hand and glances up at the clock in the room. Morning already? Looking down at Naruto, a soft sigh is emitted. Geez, look at me letting my mind wander like that. I might as well go make breakfast before I have a little rest myself. Leaning down, she planted a tender kiss on top of his brow. For a moment Rin lingered on top of him before pulling off. I miss you, Amiya-kun, please, get well soon, nay. Her hand stroked his cheek once more before getting up to head to the living room. Just a small breakfast to settle my stomach before I crash, mumbled out Rin. She was exhausted to the bone after toiling countless hours away in the bedroom healing Amiya Naruto's broken body. The ruby pendant infused with prana over the years had helped immensely, but it wasn't an end-all, be-all solution. Avalon had the sole rights to that. The only thing was that Saber wasn't there to keep it active, so it was forced into a hibernation/passive healing mode. A hand was brought up to the front of her mouth to stifle a yawn. Tired, Rin? A voice calls out from the living room. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw that it was Miram in his true form with his left arm attached. He was sitting at one end of the table casually snacking on some fruits while leaning back. Of course, she rolled her eyes. Why don't you try spending almost an entire day trying to bring someone back from the brink of death, huh? Well, I would have if someone wasn't so adamant in doing it all themselves. If I recall correctly, you actually had the gall to give me the boot. There was a menacing grin on his face that promised retribution. You're lucky that I like you and Amiya-kun enough to not. What? Enthrall our bodies? Make us your mindless slaves? Disintegrate us? Her voice was equally bored and tired as she sat down with a plate of toast, jam, and hot tea. Come on now, surely you can do better than your usual threats, Miram-kun. Ek-dash. He choked on a piece of fruit at how casually dismissive she was to him. He, the 20th ancestor, certifiably ranked as one of the most dangerous beings on the planet, was being chided like a child by a human who was barely out of her teens. You know? You might be the first ancestor to die from choking on a piece of fruit. Won't that be a story to tell if that happens? Miriam's fist slammed into his chest and hacked out a tangerine. Gross. Don't you have table manners? She moved her plate out of the way as it landed near her side of the table. God! Crown scratched his head frustratingly like a child. You sound like Rita whenever she chides me about stupid and inane things about my habits. And I hate Rita. An unladylike snort comes out from Rin. No, let's be real. You hate because she amassed a larger collection of treasures than you and owns a castle. Well, I got a temple, he sputtered. The Temple of Solomon. Which isn't even yours to begin with, she slides in easily. It wasn't even dedicated to you. You just happened to have come across it, and took it for yourself because you thought it looked nice, so you enthralled Nebuchadnezzar II to sack it. It still counts, he pouts. Rin gave him a flat and exhausted stare. A part of her was still in disbelief that an ancestor acted like such a child. Another part of her suspected it was merely an act to disarm and lower people's guards down. Or maybe it really was his personality? Either way, it was polarizing as he could go from deathly serious to deathly comedic. Ahem, he coughed into his hand. Besides all that, while you were healing Amiyakuen, I'd been compiling all the information my left arm has been able to gather the past 6 months, and let me tell you, there are some juicy bits of information I've got stored up in my head, although you look like you're about to pass out, Rin. We can always wait until. The jeweled magus stubbornly waved his concerns away. She wanted information now. I've waited for almost half a year, Miriam. I don't, a yawn interrupts her mid-sentence. I don't have any more patience left to wait. Just lay it on me. His tongue audibly clicks. All right then. I'll start from the beginning. Whatever you do, don't interrupt me. I want to get through this as quickly as possible. Rin nodded her head in compliance. And so a vampire ancestor recounted everything to a jeweled magus. His liberation of an oppressed coastal trading village. His befriending of Team 7 and his relationship with Kakashi. His return to his birthplace followed by his former teacher's request to assist in preparing his team for a promotional trials. From there on, Rin learned of Naruto's rather interesting development with Sasuke. Something about the aforementioned girl left a bad taste in her mouth. The way she looked at Naruto and her felt incredibly unsettling. Eyes filled with both envy and jealousy. Not even Luviagelita Edelfelt looked at her like that. The pure unadulterated enmity gave Rin some cause for concern. She made a note to watch her back around the Uchiha girl. By the time Rin refocused back onto the conversation, Miriam was giving a rundown of the recent events that developed hours before their arrival at the wall. Ryder, Avenger, and Michael Roa Valdemjong launching their attack on the village and leaving a burning village filled with corpses in their wake. On their ride here, the two of them caught the tail end of the events that transpired into a massive golden explosion. A telltale sign of him activating Excalibur to blast something away into oblivion. And that's where you finally come into the picture, Rin. Her fingers came up to massage her temples slowly as she let out an exasperated sigh. What? Regretting that maybe you should have taken the offer to rest before having all this information unloaded on you. He crossed his arms. Don't go shooting the messenger now. In fact, I am regretting to not rest first. This is certainly a lot to take in all at once, she says softly. It seems like no matter what, the nightmares of the Holy Grail War cease to be put down for good. Here I thought it would be easy to dismantle the system at first. Ha, how foolish of me. There was a despondent look on her face as she stared off into space. Remembering. Reminiscing. Rin softly shook her head to dispel the dour thoughts that were beginning to form in her head. It wouldn't be prudent for her to spiral into such a depressive state. Amiya Naruto already did the majority of it for the both of them. She didn't need to add into it herself. Miriam didn't respond for a few moments, allowing an uneasy silence to befall the living room. You know we'll have to report this to both the Mages Association and the Holy Church. I know. A hefty weight settled on Rin's shoulders. This wasn't panning out to how she expected things to go. It was simple. Go to the other side of the world. Pick Amiya Naruto up whether he went willingly or by her dragging him by his collar, and then going back home. That was it. Now with the development of the Grail, discovery of Michael, and heroic spirits, it was only a matter of time before the world of Magi collided with the world of Shinobi. And at the center of it all was her and Naruto. The thought alone made her weary for the future. Her shoulders sagged slightly as she pinched the bridge of her nose. On second thought, Miram, I'll be taking my rest. We'll talk some more after I'm not mentally dead on my feet. Very well. I presume I have the house then? She hummed. If they aren't already keyed into the bounded field, then kick them out. If they're stubborn, well, I'm sure you can handle it. Rin felt like her feet were turned into stone as she laid her dishes into the sink and yawned on her way out to go back to Naruto's room. Oh, don't you worry about me, Rin-chan. I can take care of myself very well, he waved as Rin left his sight. Coming up to Naruto's room. The door leading into his room was left ajar. Rin narrowed her eyes at it as she distinctly remembered shutting it completely. And who do we have in here? Her voice was barely above a whisper as she quietly snuck into the room to catch the perpetrator. Peering into the dark and quiet room, Rin came across a rather peculiar scene of someone sitting awfully too close for her comfort over a sleeping Naruto. Her tired expression was replaced with irritation and displeasure. The sight of Uchiha Sasuke hovering over Amiya Naruto rankled her. It pushed several buttons that not even Livigelita Edelfelt could manage to do. There was something indiscernible being muttered from the girl as she looked over him. Sasuke's hand reached out to cup his face, but just before she could, Rin announced her presence in the room. And what do you think you're doing? Her voice thick with disapproval and aggravation. An ugly scowl was set on her face as Sasuke jerked her hand back. A mixture of shock and surprise could be seen on the girl's face as their eyes met. Rin looked down from her nose while tapping her foot onto the tatami mat, impatiently waiting for Sasuke's answer. Well? The Uchiha girl schooled her features and returned a glare. I was just checking up on him. Sure you were, Rin rolled her eyes. The fact that you were hovering over him like some sort of creep and were about to touch his face for some unknown reason kind of gives it away. Let me make this clear, okay? She leaned forward. I don't want you around him. Got it? What? Sasuke shot up and got into Rin's face. That's completely unreasonable. I'm his friend. Teal eyes narrowed at cold black eyes. And I'm his girlfriend. Rin's smirk caused the other girl to clench her first and grind her teeth. I don't care if that sounds unreasonable to you. Just be glad that I'm allowing you to even stay in the house, let alone sleep under the same roof as him in the guest house. How dare you? Seethed Sasuke. Rin tossed her back nonchalantly. I dare because he's mine. Rin shot a parting smile just before she slid the doors shut. A soft snap, click, and the door was locked. The black-haired magus huffed a tired breath before softly glaring at Naruto. Geez, you sure do know how to find the most peculiar of people, Amiya-kun. First Edelfelt, then Karen, and now this Uchiha girl. She softly scratched her head as she laid down next to him on another futon. Ah well, you know me. I'm a hedonist through and through. And I would be lying to you if I didn't get a certain amount of pleasure from crushing other girls' hopes and dreams of dating you. Her hand tenderly cups his face before planting a soft kiss on his cheek. Naruto visibly reacted and moved his head in her direction unconsciously. You missed me too, didn't you, Amiya-kun? Grinned Rin. I missed you too, so you'll be getting plenty of those when you wake up. But first you'll be getting my fists before any kisses. She audibly yawned into the quiet room. Time for me to get some sleep. Just a short, little, nap. A pleasant and satisfied expression present on her face when she finally drifted off to sleep. Uchiha Sasuke glared hatefully at the door with her Sharingan eyes blazing. No. It wasn't the door she was glaring at. It was the person who was behind the door that she was glaring at. Tosaka Rin, she spat out the name disgustingly in her mind. Her hands were clenching and unclenching constantly as a myriad of emotions were in turmoil. There was so much flooding in that she didn't know how she wanted to exactly feel or do. Tosaka Rin had offended her on so many levels that it left her reeling. Tosaka Rin dismissed her like she was some nobody. She was an Uchiha, the last heiress of the vaunted clan that could recount their history for hundreds and hundreds of years. It was unacceptable. Her hands gripped the handle of her sword to cut down the door. However, Rin's threat gave her pause. She had control over the house's boundary field, meaning she had complete control on who stayed, who entered, and who left. Sasuke wanted to scream in anguish and frustration. It was unfair. Life was ridiculously unfair. Just when she thought she was heading towards something better that could improve her life, the world decided that that was wrong and sent someone to derail it all. Hot tears seeped out of her eyes. The palms of her hands came up to rub them away. She turned her back towards the door and left the room to head towards the living room. She didn't feel like being there anymore. Sliding open the doors to the living room, Miram greets her with a wave of his hand while holding a cup of tea. "Hello? Sasuke-san?" His tone was cheery at first before it descended into bits of concern. His violet eyes peered at her before he nodded his head understandingly. I see, you've encountered the Spitfire known as Tosaka Rin? My condolences. Here, come take a seat instead of standing there and moping. He motioned with his hand for Sasuke to take a seat in front of him. I feel like I should apologize first and foremost about Rin. She's, he looked off to the side trying to find the correct words to describe the Magus. She has a very strong and abrasive personality, to say the very least. No, disagreed Sasuke. She's a bitch. GHRK-. Miram spat his tea back into his cup before looking up at Sasuke and guffawed a bit. Sasuke blinked owlishly. What? Ha, look, Sasuke, he pointed at her with his free hand. Thank you for that laugh, but I would refrain from actually saying that to her face. How come? She was genuinely confused. To her, Tosaka Rin didn't look like much in terms of strength and physicality. The girl was, much to her chagrin, too beautiful and gorgeous to have looked like she did any hard work in her life. Her skin looked flawless. Her hair too immaculate. Her hands and nails pristine. Every bit of her was just too damn perfect. Everything about her aggravated Uchiha Sasuke down to the bone. Well, she may not look like it, but Rin is quite the capable individual when it comes down to it. The girl isn't afraid of getting down and dirty if the need arises. He takes a sip from his tea. Rin embodies the idiom, if you want something done right, do it yourself down to a T. Strongly independent, incredibly sharp tongue and wit, super stingy and bossy, and overly protective of what's hers. Being in such a rather close association with a Miyukuin pushed all the wrong buttons, and that's why Rin came so strongly into you. One of Sasuke's eyebrows rose up as she gave him a flat stare. How was that supposed to excuse Rin's awful attitude and disposition towards her? Miram picked up on Sasuke's expression. Rin's been through a lot these past couple of months. So the sight of another girl, a pretty one nonetheless, being so close to him made you the target of her ire and frustrations. She's usually more receptive and pleasant when it concerns new people. She threatened to kick me out, bit out Sasuke. What? Did you try kissing him or something? He scrutinized. W-dash? No. Her hands waved in denial. I just, reached out to him to see how he was doing is all. I mean that's basically the same thing. Sasuke's head simply dropped to the table. The thought of kissing Naruto was extremely pleasant in her mind. In fact, the idea of being in a relationship with him was also extremely receptive to her. It was one of the main reasons why she tried confessing to him on top of the wall that day to get her feelings out to him. But with Rin here it completely derailed everything. A feeling of anger and sadness welled within her again. A glower look appearing on her face. Oh, don't look so dour, Sasuke-chan. Miram misinterpreted glower with dour. Once a Miyukuin wakes up from his comatose state he'll reign in Rin, hopefully. He's usually the one that tries to put out the fires that Rin makes in her wake with other women. That statement improved her mood a little bit. Anyways, we should prepare to greet our guest soon. A little frog is hopping on its merry way into our humble abode. He should be here any moment now. Sasuke turned around the moment the door slid open to reveal Jiraiya. Miram had impeccable senses and timing as she hadn't registered that there was another person within the premises. Frog? Why, I'll have you know that the correct term is toad, sputtered the white-haired sage. And who are you calling little, you brat? Actually, who the hell are you, kid? Miram's eye twitched at being called a kid and brat. I'll have you know I've lived for over 2 millennium, you old perverted tadpole, he replied with indignation clear in his tone. Call me a kid or a brat one more time, I dare you. Sasuke's head swiveled back and forth as the two barbed insults and threats to each other. Jiraiya guffawed as he sat down next to her. I'm not just any old perverted tadpole though. I'm a super pervert. Get that right, kid? The dead apostle ancestor palmed his face. That's not supposed to be a compliment. Miyakun was right. You're absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievably perverted and great. I'll be sure to stop by my godson to thank him. Miriam gagged. I think you're shaping up to be the first human that'll make me sick. Jiraiya-sama? Sasuke spoke up nervously. I'm not sure if you know who you're talking to. Her eyes darting back and forth in worry. She wasn't sure if Jiraiya knew who Miriam was or what he was capable of. Naruto had warned her about dead apostle ancestors with their temperament and powers. Bah, I know who he is. He waved her off and flashed her a disarming smile. I read through Kiritsugu's little guidebook, so don't you worry your pretty little face about me. Jiraiya coughed into his hand before speaking again. Miriam Solomon. The 20th dead apostle ancestor of the 27, member of the Holy Church, the collector of treasures and seeker of fortunes. Master of information gathering, espionage, and spying. Did I get it right? Pity, and here I was hoping to make a flashy introduction, Miriam murmured flatly. And that was mostly it really. Ho ho. Flashy introduction you say? I just so happen to be a master of introductions. Wanna see a kid? And have both Miyakun and Rin tear into me about letting some old toad blow up their living room? Fat chance, scoffed Crown. I promise it'll be good. Jiraiya wiggled his eyebrows. It'll be the best one you'll have ever seen in your life. Miriam rolled his eyes. I assure you. I've seen and experienced it also if you would be so kind as to not show. Anyways, he cuts off with the pleasantries. What are you doing here? With how recent events have unfolded, I'm certain you're not visiting for pleasure, so speak your business. The smile was quickly wiped off Jiraiya's face and was replaced by a grim and somber look. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the Sandaime Hokage was killed in action against Michael. The white-haired man corrected himself, evidently too used to calling his former teammate anything else. Not only that, but the other 4 Kage were also heavily injured in the fight when they tried assisting Sarutobi-sensei. He sighed deeply to himself. It was clear that he was greatly saddened by his teacher's death. The only caveat to the situation is that old man Sarutobi was able to seal his arms away permanently. So Michael, he spat, won't be doing much now that he's a cripple. Wait. How was it that one person managed to go against 5 Kage-level opponents? That's just crazy, said Sasuke in absolute disbelief. A contemplative look settled on Miriam's face. Michael is a rather strange anomaly even amongst us apostle ancestors. A good amount of individuals that comprise our rankings achieve their immortality typically through research and thaumaturgy. A very small, and I stress this as much as possible, group of us achieved our immortality through either a true ancestor or through Brunestad himself. From what I remember, he achieved his by tricking the last true ancestor by having her drink his blood and stealing a significant portion of her power as the result. There was a hint of disgust in his voice. I won't bore you with the intricacies and details as it spans almost 1,000 years, but in his time before his first reincarnation, Michael's strength was unparalleled compared to everyone else. He trampled his way up through the rankings, challenging fools to one-on-one before crushing them and taking their power base as his. It wasn't until the last true ancestor and the Holy Church that he lost the majority of his powers. So I can't imagine it being too far-fetched that he was able to stave off your leaders and kill at least one of them. Jiraiya reached out to teapot in the middle of the table to pour himself a cup of tea. 1,000 years he mulls over the cup before drinking. I can't even begin to imagine living beyond 100. The report from the ANBU that were situated outside of his barrier? His eyes deferred to Miriam for correction. Bounded field most likely. He most likely deployed his reality marble to make sure there were no extra intruders in his fight. He tends to dislike those who butt into his private matters. His bounded field blocked any and every attempt to enter the area. When it finally came down, they witnessed what appeared to be the resurrected forms of the Shodaime and Nidaime Hokage fending off assaults from the Reikage, Tsuchikage, Mizukage, and Kazekage. He used them both to distract everyone else as he made his retreat after losing his arms. A small pause settled in the dining room for a moment before it was broken by Miriam. I offer my condolences, Jiraiya-san, and my apologies. The problems of our world leaked over to yours and has resulted in tens of thousands of lives being lost simply due to negligence on our part. Jiraiya held his hand up and shook his head. No, it's also my fault as well. I had the opportunity to kill Orochimaru at one point in my life, but I had believed he was redeemable, and for the longest of times I pursued that in my life. Hopelessly believing that one day I could save my best friend. Ha! I was such a foolhardy idiot back then. And such is life. Is there anything else? The Toad Sage rubbed his chin in thought. After the other 4 Kage recover, they'll be holding a meeting of all 5 nations soon in the north. Miriam quirked an eyebrow up. That's rather unheard of, a meeting with all the major powers on this continent? All for what? Just one man? No, there'll be more to discuss once Konoha acquires its next Hokage. He glances over at Sasuke. It's all I can say for now, but I'm sure you'll know where to look with your little system in place. Ah, so you know, a smug grin was directed to Jiraiya. Color me impressed that you found out. Trust me, it takes one to know one, winks Jiraiya. Throughout the conversation Sasuke was absorbing everything and only chimed in out of disbelief of information more than curiosity. So, where's Naruto at? I heard he got banged up pretty bad out on the wall. In his bedroom recovering. Oh? You don't mind if I check up on him, do you? Asked Jiraiya while getting ready to get up. I don't think Rin would like that very much. I'm fairly certain there's a distinct do not disturb sign up in front of the door. You can ask Sasuke-chan here how well that went for her. Oh. A girlfriend? He never told me about having a girlfriend. And what is this? His head whipped around towards Sasuke, causing her to lean back. A love triangle? This is juicy. Tell me more, Miriam-san. In a flash there was a notebook and pen in his hands ready to jot down notes. Sasuke snatched the notebook out of Jiraiya's hand lightning fast and burned it into a crisp. No to worry. He fishes out another notebook from inside his clothing. An author and researcher such as myself is always prepared for inevitable events such as this one. Now we were talking about a love triangle. I need details, come on. Sasuke's teeth grinded against each other. It's none of your business. The look she gave to Jiraiya and Miriam was one that promised death. For Miriam he merely chuckled at the absurdity of it. On the other hand, Jiraiya, with his rocky experience with women and their righteous fury, made him slowly back off and pockets the notebook and pen away. Alright, no need to give us that look, sheesh. In all seriousness though, I actually didn't know he had a girlfriend. I didn't either, grumbled Sasuke. It would have been better to say she had a suspicion of it after there were clues dropped here and there, but ignored it. Out of sight, out of mind. Well, Amiya-kun has always been a very private person, said Miriam. He never did like people prying into his personal life too much until you bugged him about it or became a part of it. What can you tell me about this girl? Asked Jiraiya. Well, what do you know? Apart from the fact that some girl came swooping down to save Naruto and announced herself that she was his girlfriend, that's all I know. Jiraiya nudged his elbow to Sasuke playfully. And I can't expect Sasuke-chan here to be a useful source of reliable information. Conflict of interest and all that, you know. She was not amused at all. Wipe that grin off or I wipe it off for you. See? He gave a pointed look. Why don't we just wait until she wakes up and everyone else gets here first? Rin can do all the talking herself. Speaking of which, where is Kakashi, Anko, and Sakura? Busy, I'm guessing? Jiraiya snorted out loud. Ain't that an understatement? Kakashi is off helping Shikaku with establishing order within the village. Anko as well, entertaining the guests over at the Ministry of Intelligence. And as for that pink-haired girl Sakura? I think I saw her putting in overtime at the General Hospital. When do you think they'll be off? With how everything went to hell in a handbasket. They should be off by the afternoon at the very least. Everyone's operating on 12 or 16-hour shifts. Kakashi and Anko have been doing overtime, and Sakura probably started hers not too long ago. Good enough, I suppose. Miriam glances over at the clock. Rin should be up by then and we'll all have a nice and lovely chat. I can only imagine how that's going to go. Jiraiya nodded his head in agreement. Sasuke scowled at the prospect instead. An odd feeling bubbled in her stomach that she was not going to like the afternoon conversation. Naruto-kun, wake up soon, please, murmured Sasuke softly to herself. Rin's eyes slowly fluttered open as someone disturbed her peaceful slumber. It was the sound of someone groaning in pain softly in the quiet room. There was something wet her hands felt. Shit! Cursed Rin. I overslept. I can't believe I overslept. She shot up and threw the covers off of her to rush to the medical aid box to replace the bandages on Naruto's arm. I'm so sorry, Amiya-kun. She apologized profusely while patching up his right arm. Damn it all! When she finally finished, Rin let loose a sigh of relief and leaned back on her elbows. Geez, nice job on oversleeping, you idiot, she berated herself. What time is it? 6 o'clock. Agug. So much for a short little nap. Now my sleep schedule is all messed up. Well, I guess I'd better clean up and find out what Miram's been up to. With a short jaunt to the adjacent bathroom, Rin cleaned up in record time and returned to the bedroom to check on Naruto one more time before heading to the dining room. Standing in front of the dining room door, her ears picked up a decent amount of voices from the other side. How many people did you let in, Miram? Breathing in deeply, she straightened out her back and held her head high. Here goes nothing. All talk within the room was immediately silenced as she slid the door open. Everyone that was around the table turned towards her with a questioning gaze except for Miram. He had a smile that irritated her for some odd reason. Rin, the Sleeping Beauty. So glad for you to finally join us. We've all been waiting for you. Her head nodded slowly. She made her way to the head of the table and sat down primly. Several of the faces present at the table were immediately recognizable for her. Everyone except for the white-haired man with the giant scroll at his side were on the wall when she informally introduced herself before hurrying off to follow Miram to Naruto's current residence. Rin directed a poignant glance at Miram. I'm guessing you're the one that organized this little soiree? Not entirely, of course, Crown replied plainly. I suppose it was only inevitable, sighed Rin. I was hoping to do this at another time, but, oh well. A moment if you will while I make room for myself, please? She took her time to clear some space in front of her by setting aside the various books, documents, and folders strewn about. Amazing, you actually organized your notes like how I showed you, Amiya-kun, murmured Rin. Her face visibly approved at how he stacked and organized pertinent information from useless filler junk. Her fingers rifled through some of the objects, glancing enough to get an idea before placing them away. There were varying subjects such as taxes, historical documents, personal dissertations, reports, personal notes on thaumaturgy, and scribbles here and there about when to return home to Fuyuki City. The more she read, the more she was able to discern what went on inside his head. It filled her with relief that even being halfway across the world she was still in his heart and mind. There we go, she said as she moved the last book out of the way. Glancing up she saw that Sasuke didn't even try to hide her glare. The pink-haired girl next to her had her lips set in a thin line. You know if you try and glare any harder you might pop a vein in your head? A low growl emits from her throat. A retort was on the cusp of her lips, but the masked man to her left was quicker on the uptake. So, you're the mystery girlfriend that Miram mentioned a while back. His eye glanced at Sasuke to force her down. So you've already heard of me? Then yes, I am that person Miram referred to, answered Rin. It's nice to finally meet you. My name is Hotaki Kakashi, he introduces himself before looking to the woman to his right to continue. This is Midarashi Enko, a purple-haired woman. We used to be Naruto's guardians and teachers before he went off to travel around the world. Next is Harino Sakura. A mixture of pain and grief struck her heart, but refrained from visibly showing it. The death of her sister was still a sore subject. The fact that they shared the first names and almost had the same demeanor made her hands tighten. Next to her is Uchiha Sasuke. I was informed that the two of you already met earlier today. Is this true? Rin smiled, correct. We had a pleasant and enlightening conversation this morning. It was a devious smile that was mired by her sweet and innocent voice. Kakashi coughed into his hand. And finally we have Jiraiya, the man's voice cuts in. Just Jiraiya, no surname. His hand was rubbing his chin as he gave her a scrutinizing look. She blinked. Her eyebrows scrunched together in mild confusion. Was he leering at her? And suddenly out of nowhere he pulled out two signs bearing the number 10 in bright red. Damn Naruto! You sure know where to find them. You, my lady, have earned a perfect score. My godson is amazing. Truly a god amongst mere mortals. He was checking her out. Jiraiya was nothing but an enormous pervert. Rin's eye twitched in annoyance. Man, he hit the jackpot alright. And I thought Minato struck gold with Kushina. His son truly went above and beyond. Hot damn! His hand slammed against the table repeatedly to show how proud he was. As if it couldn't get any worse. He fished out a notepad and pen to which he started scribbling furiously. Perfect long dark hair. Beautiful face. A stunning figure. Oh man! My godson has been hiding out on me. And those legs HKKK. At that point Rin officially had enough. Her form shot up from her seat and smashed her foot into Jiraiya's head repeatedly. Gaha! Quit stepping on me, woman! Heh, I never realized Miyako-kun had such a lecherous godfather, she said through gritted teeth. With one final stomp, she returned back to her seat with a healthy amount of satisfaction. With that out of the way, I am Tosaka Rin. I am a magus just like Naruto who represents the Mages Association of the Clock Tower branch. An association, huh? And since you said branch, I'm guessing that there are others, correct? Pondered Kakashi. Correct. The Mages Association consists of 3 main branches: the Clock Tower, the Sea of Astray, and Atlas. With of course the Clock Tower being the official main headquarters and administrative body. Both Kakashi and Anko looked relieved. They were finally starting to get the answers to their questions at long last. What's a mage such as yourself doing all the way out here over yonder? You must have traveled what? Halfway across the world by now, states Jiraiya. I've traveled the world, little missy, and that jump over the pond ain't an easy thing. One of Rin's delicate eyebrow arched up. The answer is obvious, Jiraiya-san. I came looking for my wayward moronic numbskull that's currently incapacitated in his bedroom. Fortunately, I came in just the nick of time to save him from almost dying. Again, she says the last part in exasperation. Out of the corner of her eye, Sasuke's eyes narrows ever so slightly at her. Did she push a button again? This isn't the first time he almost died? Speaks up Sakura. Let me think. First there was Lancer, next was with Archer, but I don't think that really counts since, well. Rin trailed off before shaking her head. The other one for sure was against Louvre, right, Miriam? Yup. And one of the most recent would be our most recent fiasco, so all in all it would be around 3 times now. Yeah, that sounds just about right. He loves to play hooky with death. This one for sure would have been his 4th if I hadn't reached him in time. She listed it off so casually that the shinobi in the room were aghast. I'm sorry, Sasuke was the first to recover, but I'm very confident that Sakura could have healed him up just as well as you could at the hospital this time around. She's an up-and-coming healer around these parts, so I think you're overinflating yourself here, Rin. She flashed Sasuke a neutral smile and disagreed. While I have no doubt in Haruno-san's capabilities to physically heal him back up to working order, it's the spiritual aspect that would have left him largely crippled at his core. Thaumaturgical wounds require thaumaturgical healing. It's as simple as that. Then we should thank you for your hard work in saving his life once more, Tosaka-san, quickly said Anko. Her eyes glanced at Sasuke and it looked like she was about to send a nasty retort. It would do nothing to drive the conversation further for more information. Kakashi and I feel like we should be apologizing for how much trouble he gets himself into. We're glad to know that at least someone has been watching his back and acting as his guardian angel. Rin waved it off. You don't need to, honestly. Like I said, this isn't the first time I've had to pull Moron out of a tight spot, and I certainly don't expect it to be the last. Her eyes took a quick peek again at Sasuke and received the same reaction as before. It seemed like she was getting upset at how she was referring to him. It sounds like you and Naruto have a lot of stories together, said Kakashi. An unladylike snort comes out of her nose. You don't even know. I think I've had more than a lifetime's worth of adventure being with him. Come to think of it, it's mostly me warning Miyako-kun to not do something that'll get him hurt. I look away for just one moment, and he comes back neck deep in trouble. That man, I swear. Everyone shares a small laugh, even Sasuke, though she quickly tried to hide it. Yep, agreed Anko. That definitely sounds like our Naruto-chan. A fond expression settles on Rin's face. The memories of their first meeting in Hamurahara Academy to the sunny days of studying in the clock tower came fluttering back in her mind. Practicing and learning together. walking around, seeing the sights and simply enjoying what life had to offer. It was all so serene. If you don't mind me asking, how long have you known Naruto-chan? Anko asked. Will be about 5 years now. I first met him when we were just started our first year in Hamurahara Academy. Hamurahara Academy? Parrots Anko. Is that a mega school? Kakashi follows up. Nope. Just a plain old mundane academic school. Math, language, science, history, athletics, she lists off. Every normal thing you can think of in a school, pretty much. A bewildered look is shared among the shinobi at the table. Are you serious? Anko said in disbelief. I mean, we're talking about normal civilian school, right? General education and all that, right? Indeed. Why? What's with all the looks you're giving me? Rin caught onto the strange looks she was getting. Naruto had informed her at some point that they too had regular schools back in his home, so why the weird stares? And no, it's just the thought of Naruto going to a regular old school for civilians is just hard to imagine, explained Kakashi. To go from sitting in a class to learn how to efficiently kill someone 6 different ways with a kunai to sitting in a classroom learning y equals mx plus b is rather jarring, so his voice trailed off. Then I think you'll be happy to know he was fairly studious in his academics. He consistently received high marks in his grades that he came close to usurping my spot at the top of our year on many occasions. It was one of the many things that caught her attention about him in the first place. He was a relatively quiet and unknown student who had transferred in the beginning of the year. He passed his entrance exams into Hamurahara Academy with flying marks and quickly asserted himself as the little helper among the teachers and students. By their second year, he was widely known in the school as their student janitor. A smirk wormed its way to Rin's mouth. It never failed to amuse her when she teased Naruto about the nickname. That would have made him around 14 years old when you first met Naruto, right? Kakashi asked Rin, to which she nodded in confirmation. Meaning realistically he was hopping around the neighboring countries for about a year or so before he left, that crafty, manipulative, shady bastard. Rin watched as realization finally dawned upon Kakashi's face. He got you too, huh, Kakashi? Said a bemused Jiraiya. Don't worry, because he even fooled me and sent me on a wild goose chase all around the continent chasing his ghost. I've always kept tabs on him while I was out in the field. So when old man Sarutobi sent me a little message that my esteemed godson was taking a little jaunt, I tried tailing him for insurance purposes. Make sure he doesn't get himself into too much trouble and bail him out if it gets too hot. You know? Jiraiya heaved a mighty chuckle. I was always apparently one town too late, or one whole country behind. He was always ahead of me, and the stories the locals shared of some kid playing hero kept getting bigger and bigger the longer I searched. I didn't realize that I was being strung along until I came full circle. He leans onto the table with a grin. All those people that were talking about him and were singing his name to the high heavens? They were all in on it. No way? Said an incredulous Kakashi. Yep. Jiraiya smacked his hand down on the table, causing all the objects to rattle. You should know how fast information can fly when someone starts rocking the boat. Merchants, traders, and travelers have pretty big mouths when it comes to stuff like that. Naruto here somehow gamed the system and got them to delay how fast the information got circulated around the continent. So you're saying that all those years of people talking were just simply rehashing old news? Kakashi was still in disbelief at the whole thing. Pretty much, Jiraiya nodded. If you still don't believe me, then let me ask you this. Remember that whole fiasco up in the land of snow with Princess Koike that was resolved a year ago? He brought up his fingers in air quotation marks. Yeah, try about 4 years ago. That was his last known location before he disappeared for good, and I'll bet my entire life savings that a certain grateful princess helped him too. Rin shared a knowing smirk with Miram from across the table as the two shinobi came to a revelations of some sort. The land of snow was fairly autonomous, and routinely stayed out of the affairs of the Great Five. The government was incredibly progressive and maintained contact with the other side of the world for the bulk of their trade. And because of that trade, they were able to acquire technology well beyond some of the means compared to other nations. Kakashi leaned back and stared up at the ceiling. Well, I'll be damned. Yeah, it wasn't foolproof, as there was only a certain amount of time before the well of information ran dry. That's why you experienced that sudden drop-off of news pertaining to Naruto. At some point it was bound to stop. I'm honestly impressed that it lasted that long to fool everyone back home. Anko whistled in amazement. So Rin-san, would you know why he traveled such great lengths to go across the world to, that place? Or wherever it is? Fuyuki City, Rin filled in for Anko. As for why? She internally debated to telling them. It was one of his closely guarded secrets that took ages for her to pry out of him. The information given to her was built on a foundation of trust and faith to each other. To give it out so willingly would betray that. She didn't have that right to tell them. If anyone, it should be Naruto coming forth with it if he so choose to. So she deflected. Could be a multitude of things. Honestly, sometimes I don't know what goes through that idiot's hard head. You'd have to ask him for a clear answer. Anko agreed wholeheartedly. That's very true. Naruto-chan can be incredibly thick-headed and silly at times when he wants to be. That's putting it lightly, mused Rin. Sometimes I can't tell whether I'm talking to a brick wall or Naruto. They all shared a laugh at her joke except for Sasuke and Sakura. The former scowled even more while the latter held a neutral smile. So, Rin-chan. Jiraiya's voice boomed in the house. I've been meaning to ask you something that I hope you don't mind being answered. Sure, it's what I've been doing all evening so far. From there he adopted a perverted grin and giggled like a madman. Hee, so, you and Naruto have known each other for quite some time, huh? Her eyes narrowed. She didn't like where this was heading, but responded nonetheless. Yes, she started off slowly. We've been dating for the past couple of years. Why? Jiraiya was scribbling furiously into his notepad. So, have you too, done it? Jiraiya-san, Rin's voice was sickly sweet with a fake smile. You're a despicably shameless pervert. What Naruto and I do behind closed doors are private. She was 5 seconds away from punting him through the ceiling. Come on. He begged for something. Gimme something to work with on my next book. What's he like? Is he good? Is he a passionate lover? Wait. No. I know your type. That look you're giving me. I know what you are. One of Rin's eyes began to twitch uncontrollably. She knew what he was going to call her. You're a. Don't you do it. A sun dash. Her ka. Jiraiya sadly never finished as Rin leapt across the table and swiftly kicked him up into the ceiling. His scream cut through the air as he was sent flying off into the upper atmosphere. Kakashi whistled. Wow, he said in his usual flat voice. I think you actually broke Tsunade-sama's record, Rin-san. That stupid pervert, how dare he call me that, grumbled Rin. Her stomach soon rumbled audibly in hunger. Well, would anyone like dinner? Miram rolled his eyes. Rin really was at Sundara. Although he wouldn't dare be caught saying that publicly. Rin's first dinner in the Fuyuki-like residence in Konoha was a subdued affair with Kakashi and Anko asking more questions about Naruto's life abroad. She did her best to answer without giving too much away, making sure to cherry-pick her words and carefully select which stories to tell to them. Currently she was taking her time washing the dishes to mull over the close friends of Naruto. Jiraiya was certainly a quirky individual. A pervert of the highest order. Quite possibly the most lecherous person she had ever encountered. But he seemed to be a rather jovial person with a hint of altruism. Underneath all of it, he must have cared deeply for Naruto being his wayward godson even though he was absent for a large part of his life. Above all else, Rin respected that greatly. Having someone in your heart even though they had never met you before or were gone for long periods of time took a lot of conviction. So for the meantime she would let his perversion slide, for now. Kakashi and Anko were obviously a couple with how they constantly traveled as a pair. There was an older sibling vibe that came off of them when it concerned Naruto. Not too overbearing nor uncaring. They were genuinely concerned about his life and his health. Honestly, it was adorable to see them play off of each other in their conversation. Both of them had the ability to play instigator and follow up on one another easily. It reminded her of the exchanges she would have with Saber and Naruto. And lastly there was Sasuke and Sakura. Rin let loose a small sigh. How ironic that they both have oddly colored hair. Haruno Sakura was almost in a way like Matsu Sakura. They were both exceptionally quiet and reserved. They both kept to themselves, only speaking when spoken to. The way she acted was eerily similar to her deceased sister. If it weren't for the fact that she had a vastly different voice, she would have easily mistaken her as her sister. It would be by her own private admission that she did her best to avoid talking to Sakura, as much as she tried to hide it. The death of her sister was a sore subject that she would rather much keep away from if she could. Her heart still bled and cried for the purple-haired Sakura. And last but not least, Uchiha Sasuke. It was as clear as day that the girl had a romantic interest in Naruto. Drying off the last of the dishes on the counter, she took her time to carefully place the white porcelain plates and cups back in their respective cupboards. One could say that she had come off a little too strong onto Sasuke. One could also say that it was needed to know where Sasuke stood at the proverbial totem pole. All in all, until Naruto recovered and woke up, things were going to be tense between the two of them. It was only natural that there would be friction. She had merely confronted the issue instead of letting it build up to a tipping point. There was no point to skirting around the obvious contention. 10 o'clock. I'd better go and check up on Amiya-kun. Rin wiped her hands dry before heading to the bedroom. While walking to the bedroom, she finally had the chance to fully take in everything. Even though Miriam had already told her earlier today, this residence really was an exact copy of the one in Fuyuki City. Same hallway that overlooked the gardens. Same double rooms with tatami mats. Same garden. Same everything. The chances of something like this happening was so rare it couldn't have been unintentional. Arriving at the closed door, she softly slid it open. Rin gasped. Her hand shot up to cover her mouth. There in the middle of the room was Amiya Naruto propped up on his one good arm, looking around the room blearily with one eye since half of his face was still bandaged up. A lone ocean blue eye peered into her teal eyes. Tosaka. He was awake. He was conscious. Naruto, her voice tender. Naruto smiled back with his eye and lips. Tosaka. Rin choked back a sob. You stupid idiot. You're going to reopen your wounds like that. Lay back down, moron. She rushed over to softly push him back down onto his futon. Ha, sorry, he mumbled. Stupid Naruto. I did all the work to heal you back up to snuff, and this is how you repay me? You better be glad that I love you, idiot. All he did was apologize even more. I said sorry, OW. That hurt. Good. That'll teach you for being so reckless, chastised Rin. You know, you're so beautiful when you're fretting over me, he said. I miss you so much, Tosaka. Her cheeks flushed a bright pink. Idiot, she mumbled, don't go around saying stuff like that. And I still haven't forgiven you for leaving me back in Fuyuki City. So don't think you're getting out of this scot-free. Ha, of course. I'll accept my punishment as long as I get a kiss at the end, he said cheekily. Idiot. He softly chuckled in the room as she pouted while glaring. It was only fair that Amiya Naruto received its Sansan before he got the derrider from Tosaka Rin.